I haven't had this much fun in ages. What did you say your name was?
Luke Valentine.
I see you for what you really are. You're dog food. It's time to educate you on how a real vampire does battle.
Hellsing's leadership finally unleashes their overpowered trump card. It's time to check out the mess of this supposed extermination mission. To understand how things went so wrong, let's go back a few weeks. That's when a gloomy outsider decided to set up camp in an English village deader than your social life. The problem is that the local religious leader was a literal meat grinder. The police try to raid the parish to arrest the madman, completely underestimating the scale of the danger. The reception for the cops is purely lethal. The brutality of the counterattack proves this guy isn't just some serial killer, but a relentless freak straight out of hell. With the local government drowning in incompetence, Hellsing kicks down the door and seizes jurisdiction. They rub it in the cops' faces that lead bullets won't do squat against these occult threats. Under the stiletto heel of Integra, the untouchable big boss, the real terror presents itself. She decrees that any cocky monster defying the country will be turned into meat paste. The math of the contagion is laid out on the table. To become a VIP vampire with a brain, the victim has to be a virgin. If not, they just turn into a drooling zombie and a mindless slave. To deal with this carnage, the agency doesn't send in an army. They unleash a single insane agent right into the slaughterhouse, ensuring the whole mess will be flushed down the drain in mere hours. And Hellsing's mascot finally shows up on the turf. The madman walks into that freak show smiling like a kid at Disney, ready to go absolutely wild. Meanwhile, the last surviving female cop hits rock bottom. The sadistic vampire is just playing with his food, rubbing it in her face that fighting back is a complete waste of time. To make the psychological terror even worse, the girl notices her squad partners have been turned into drooling puppets for the villain. Guilt crushes the poor girl, completely shattering her will to fight. Tossing the fancy rules of contagion out the window, the scumbag priest decides the cop's fate. The bastard's plan is to reduce her to a mindless doormat slave in his army. But right at the brink of doom, an absurd intruder crashes the party. Hellsing's original monster arrives, kicking down the door to shut down this pathetic little theater on the spot. Alucard's banter is pure mockery. He sizes up the supposed master of carnage and doesn't see a badass rival, but just some generic fifth-rate trash who stumbled into the wrong neighborhood. His inflated ego completely blinds the villain. Thinking he's the man, he orders his drooling minions to gun down the Hellsing guy without a second thought. The hail of bullets leaves no room to breathe. Our suited protagonist bizarrely eats every single shot, looking like he got crumpled like an old tin can from the sheer force. Thinking he's won, the false prophet drops a tutorial on their species, lecturing that regular little guns could never kill a true blue vampire. The idiot just doesn't grasp the massive irony of what he just said. The Uno reverse card hits hard. Our hunter activates Apex Predator mode, crushing the cleric's tough guy act and drowning the poor bastard in absolute despair. The payback hits with the weight of a runaway 18-wheeler. The aggression is so raw that it completely deletes any chance of escape for the enemy. Reality harshly hits the fake-ass bloodsucker. With his swagger down the drain, he uses the hostage as a human shield, bargaining for his own life in pathetic despair. But the mocking executioner flushes the negotiation right down the toilet. Ignoring his whining, he asks the hostage an absurdly intimate question about her purity. In a state of shock, the girl confirms her little Puritan secret. For Hellsing's mad dog, that little tidbit is the green light to sign the fake priest's death certificate. The math of the kill is brutal and ice cold. To pop the villain's bubble, turning the girl into a human strainer ends up being the ruthless bonus of the combo. Piercing the cop's meat sack doesn't put a single dent in the conscience of the guy who just brought down the hammer to disinfect the trash. With the villain wiped out, the girl's medical prognosis is pure distilled misery. Her organ failure is simple math, erasing any chance of her going back to her normal little life. On the brink of death, a discount coupon from hell pops up in her face. The ultimatum has arrived. She must choose whether to embrace the angels or sell her soul in a macabre deal to stay alive. Her mental click shatters all known biology. She accepts the pact without a second thought, dying as a human and being reborn on the street as a rookie freak imprisoned by the darkness. Far away, the blonde boss checks off another completed operation. Her blind faith in her watchdog has earned yet another bloody trophy for Hellsing's shelf. But her queen-like composure melts when she realizes the colossal screw-up her agent caused. The bloodsucker put in overtime purely on a whim and completely tore up the agency's sacred manual. The final aftermath of this whole trip is a massive nightmare for HR. The kill was a 10 out of 10, but Hellsing just gained a newborn vampire on their payroll, changing the rules of the game forever. The vampire's bizarre breach of etiquette sends Integra's mind spinning 10 years into the past. It all started when the old man leading the organization kicked the bucket, dropping the bombshell of the family legacy into the lap of a completely useless lowly. The mourning period doesn't even last a long weekend. The vibe in the mansion tanks fast, and dear old uncle throws his mask in the trash to stage a basic little coup d'etat fueled by pure greed. The kill order is given without an ounce of guilt. From that millisecond on, the little girl loses her status as a niece and becomes nothing but a walking target waiting to be pumped full of lead. At the peak of her despair, her mind latches onto her father's last little chat, a dark little secret shoved into the building's foundations, kept safe specifically for when things truly went up in flames. With 0 allies left on the server, she swallows her tears and scrambles down to the abandoned dungeons. It's either a warm embrace in pitch blackness or getting turned into Swiss cheese upstairs. Her uncle racks his brain and figures out the only escape route left. The basement everyone hates becomes the main stage for the bastard to get his hands dirty and finish his macabre little game. But when the poor thing finally spots the junk hidden down there, reality hits her like a bucket of ice water. The infamous secret trump card of her bloodline looks like nothing more than a completely useless piece of trash. The brat's mind crashes as she realizes Disney lied to her. It hits her right in the face that the magic cave has 0 plot armor, and she's completely isolated with no escape button. The 2-bit coup hits its climax when the invasion shatters the hideout's safety. Her uncle's greed won't hit the brakes until he's flatlined the last remaining pulse in the room. Except instead of sitting down and crying, the brat bites back. She mocks the guy who needs to gun down his own DNA for cash, poking at the sick insanity behind this villainous temper tantrum. But a motivational speech can't tank a guy itching to pull the trigger. The gunshot smashes the reality tutorial straight into the little girl's face, handing her the absurd invoice of her last name. The boss lady's red liquid paints the floor, trashing the mansion's basement. The head honcho's juice now signs the golden trophy for this bunch of washed-up rebels. Except this sadistic psychological horror circus triggers a massive glitch in the matrix. The dripping red syrup doesn't just hit the floor for nothing, completing a grotesque download that no idiot there saw coming. The supposed pile of trash was actually just dealing with the extreme munchies. The stupidity of shooting the lowly handed over the warm juice on a silver platter to boot up the evil Megazord, proving Daddy's trap needed trauma to wake up. The beast finally does a full system boot. To the absolute pants-shitting terror of the audience, the guy isn't a brainless zombie, but a dark lord finding this family drama absolutely hilarious. Whatever duct tape held the demon back for decades evaporates into thin air. The Hellsing family's ultimate hack takes off the leash and logs back into the server to raise some hell. The bloody little show is pure abusive bullying. The vampire wipes the floor with the armed enemies with the same effort it takes to open a jar of mayo, proving exactly why he was locked away in the dark. The pathetic resistance turns to cosmic dust in seconds. The big monster cleans up the secondary trash with exquisite cruelty, tossing the uncle's masterstroke straight into the radioactive sewer. The coup-plotting boomer wins the prize of being the last sucker standing. Reality dropkicks the bastard, who finally realizes he's entirely alone on the server to foot the bill. With the trash swept away, the freak's gaze locks onto the last survivor of the mess. The lowly freaks out, thinking she just became the dessert for her own ancient prize. And then comes the neck-breaking plot twist. Disappointing anyone expecting a quick snack, the vampire sniffs out the boss DNA in the girl's blood, and the old management badge goes right back to her. The big monster takes a knee and signs his employment contract. The lowly not only dodges the coffin, but snags the demon's supreme admin password, kicking the door down as the new invincible boss. In this frame, the scared lowly is deleted, downloading the true boss lady software. The girl realizes how much power she holds and hits the red button to exterminate the family traitor with 0 mercy. The vampire stamps the ancestral contract. The Dark Lord puts his macabre loyalty on the table, making it crystal clear that the match with the girl's blood is active and turning a profit. Years later, the firm keeps wiping anomalies off the map. The current hassle is training a weak recruit who still swears blind that mundane little laws actually mean something. The edgy boss tries to uninstall the rookie's human brain. He tells the brat to throw science in the trash and permanently switch on her cursed killer instinct. The deadly gunshot clears the target perfectly. The recruit's 2 remaining brain cells finally understand the level of supernatural steroids running wild in the blood of those who rule this night shift. Outside the military playground, the Heavy Crown runs the planet. The former crybaby lowly has leveled up up and is now a relentless bulldozer, crushing any sucker through the shadows of the backstage. The tense vibe evaporates when the big monster decides to poke the bear, digging up the pants-wetting brat's humiliating past just to mock her current tough guy pose. In the corner, the rookie lackey blue screens, trying to imagine the boss lady's scared shitless. The boss lady's scandalous tantrum only manages to get a laugh out of the sadistic vampire. All this heavy banter makes it obvious that this dysfunctional family's private asylum is bizarre, but it works wonderfully well. The chaos humiliates local authorities. The regular police completely choke in the face of a bizarre threat that makes them look like glorified meter maids. That is, until the big fish arrive. The government plays its trump card, ripping the case from the weak hands of those who lack the stomach for the upcoming carnage. The Hellsing organization crashes the party, tossing conventional law straight into the trash. From here on out, this hellhole is a strictly classified war zone. The boss, Integra, stomps out any bureaucratic whining. She takes absolute control of the hunt, with zero patience for grown men with bruised egos. Instead of shooting in the dark, Integra uses her brain to crack the enemy's pattern. She turns a pile of stiffs into a brilliant predictive map. The sick motive pops up on screen, a disgusting extremist hate crime. Their methodical fetish for targeting believers completely shifts the gravity of this mission. The messed up truth behind it spills out. They aren't crazy zealots, but rookie vampires using this bloodbath as an excuse to grind their own power levels. Their ultimate prize is immortality. These idiots think they've hacked death and plan on taking an eternal vacation surfing a mountain of fresh stiffs. But reality kicks the door down. Hellsing doesn't use regular cops to kill anomalies. They unleash their very own mad dog, foaming at the mouth. The fake vampire has no clue that cocking his little metal toy is useless. Pea shooters do absolutely nothing against the devil itching to tear him in half. The boss of the night is already standing right outside. The ancient beast these worms offended by playing dress up as vampires has arrived to personally make them pay up. All that untouchable swagger goes down the drain in a heartbeat. The fake apex predator gets a massive reality check, realizing he's nothing more than a midnight snack for the real monster. In a ridiculous panic attack, the fool tries his luck. He shoots wildly, clinging to the delusion that he can even scratch this overpowered monster. Winning isn't enough. The red psychopath makes a point of crushing the enemy's pride under his boot. He rubs it in that this trash is just a cheap knockoff, completely powerless against the OG monstrosity. The brutal fatality permanently shuts down this idiot club's operations. The total obliteration proves that stepping to the final boss is a one-way ticket to a server permaban. Watching her boy toy get pulverized, the female boss realizes that fighting back is suicide and hits Usain Bolt mode. The macabre game of hide and seek changes maps. And that's when the messy job of catching the runner falls right into the rookie's lap. It's time to suck it up and clock in for her first official blood-stained shift. Her brain blue screens because her fragile little mind is still running on standard cop software. To land this headshot in the pitch dark, she needs to accept that she's already a walking corpse. Through the supercharged eyes of the newly awakened freak, the night loses its filter. The prey is perfectly locked in the crosshairs, sealing the coffin for the last idiot in this little club. Without flinching, the rookie pulls the trigger. The lethal shot is proof that she's flipped her predatory switch, burying the terrified cop of her past once and for all. The trash is wiped from the server with no save point. The squad's twisted cleanup op hits its quota with flying colors, declaring a humiliating game over for the scum. But when the dust settles, the existential dread hits like a freight train. Wielding that hand cannon like a toy and having X-ray vision forces the sniper to swallow the loss of her humanity. Far away, Integra connects the dots in her genius brain and uncovers a massive problem. These bloodsuckers aren't natural. They're being manufactured like cheap Wish knockoffs by some sicko behind the scenes. This plot twist crashes the whole server. The job goes from a routine pest control gig to a violent deathmatch against a manipulative ghost who just wants to watch the world burn. Far from the British carnage, the Catholic Church tries to play babysitter on the outskirts of Rome. But this phony peace in the sacred halls lasts about as long as a paycheck. The Vatican top brass shows up out of nowhere looking like they're at a funeral. It's pretty obvious these suits didn't gather here to talk about a church bake sale. The holy spies already know about the demonic mess swallowing Great Britain. The little party of knockoff monsters has the Vatican hitting the ultimate panic button at HQ. Leaks prove that a single British agency is holding off the end of the world all by themselves. Hellsing's absurd competence dumps a bucket of ice water on Rome's harmless, selfish little party. But the filth crossed the border and spilled right onto the Catholic Church's carpet. That foreign disaster is now being taken as a personal insult by the Pope's private fan club. The revenge plan is drawn up right then and there. The targets now include the English hunters, as the Vatican decides to crush Hellsing and kick off a shadow war between the factions. To sort this out, they summon a supreme exterminator who melts away any good guy facade. Far from being some straight-laced diplomat, the guy is literally salivating for carnage. Meanwhile, in the dead of night in England, Hellsing clocks in for some heavy-duty cleaning at a supernatural dumpster. The job requires containing this nest of mutant cockroaches as fast as possible. Dealing with the apocalypse out of sheer boredom, the boss vampire loses his patience with the extras. He decides it's time to force his traumatized new intern to join the fight. And the girl doesn't crash this party carrying a butter knife. Cocking an absurdly oversized cannon, she plants her feet on the ground to justify her deadly new job title. The rookie's payback is instant and brutal. Without an ounce of mercy, she spits out a bizarre barrage of deadly lead, wiping out the horde of brainless zombies with extreme prejudice. The retired Dracula watches from the front row, chuckling to himself. The trial by fire proves his bizarre investment paid off, and the girl learned exactly how to clean out the meat grinder. That scared little girl drama vanishes like magic. She embraces the late-night psychopathy once and for all, diving headfirst into pathetic obedience to her controlling boss. With the trash mobs discarded by the intern, the highway to the sewer boss is wide open. The duo shifts their entire focus to the main target of this wretched night, until the vibe of the whole trip completely crashes. A crushing pressure bursts into the room, forcing the two of them to slam the brakes on their little walk in the park. While the useless servant practically has a heart attack from the surprise, the retired boss goes full Joker. He figures out the sender of this cowardly attack and starts salivating with murderous lust for a brawl. The intern learns the hard way that her new monster badge isn't worth a dime right now. She gets humiliated by a holy psychopath programmed exclusively to butcher her kind. The divine beatdown shakes the building to its core. That imaginary masking tape dividing these factions' backyards just got trampled, tossing diplomacy straight into the trash. The interloper doesn't give a flying fuck about retreating. The madman marches forward, acting like he owns the place, making it crystal clear he isn't scared of England's bloodthirsty legend. The Pope's rep seals the deal by reciting little old books to mask the imminent homicide. It's the Vatican's explicit declaration of war being signed in blood right in front of them. While the pool of blood fills up, the leadership back at British HQ is dragged out of bed. The routine night shift just shifted into fifth gear, heading straight for a national security meltdown. Sweating bullets, the leadership tries to measure the sheer size of the shitstorm of facing Rome, to invade the crown and pick a fight with the OP giant bat. Simple math suggests they rented an entire holy army, but the final intel makes them pucker up with fear because they didn't send troops. The church's arrogance is so absurd that they dispatched a single psychopathic brute to wipe England off the world map. The intelligence network goes into total meltdown. The worst possible news leaks out. The Vatican got tired of just playing Peeping Tom and decided to unleash their most psychotic extermination squad. But reality hits hard because they didn't send an army. They sent a single lunatic who obviously carries the destructive power of an entire battalion in his pocket. This cult operates as the Pope's rabid dogs, meant to wipe the floor with anything impure, and the Hellsing crew is right at the top of their hit list. With the apocalypse knocking at the door, brutal decisions have to be made. The suits hit the panic button to try and put the brakes on this bloody circus. Kicking the useless paperwork to the interns, the boss realizes things have spiraled out of control. The only way to stop the disaster is by dragging her own ass straight into the eye of the storm. The funeral vibes on the front lines go completely out the window. That's the exact moment the Pope's mad dog kicks down the front door. For this batshit crazy lunatic, gunning people down isn't military work. It's a divine cleanup. He gets off on gutting everybody thinking he's blessed, but Hellsing's ultimate OP badass was already lurking in the shadows. He literally couldn't give a crap about this pathetic little theatrical display of a religious zealot playing alpha male. The tension in the air gets so heavy, it cracks the floor. The newbie vampire almost pisses her pants, realizing she's just a useless cockroach trapped between these two monsters. The bizarre mind games are in full swing. The two get closer, practically nose to nose, absolutely loving frying each other's nerves. The priest strikes in the blink of an eye, but with razor-sharp reflexes, Alucard blows his target apart before the attack can be completed. The fake end to the fight injects that delicious illusion of victory. The holy haymaker really looked like a definitive game over straight to the sucker's face. But right then and there, the demonic Arrogance comes bouncing back, laughing its ass off. The smug vampire finds it incredibly charming and treats the human's audacity like a live-action comedy. And the church's swagger is actually justified. Their arsenal shoves some cocky divine poison right in your face, purely focused on frying any cheap regeneration tricks. But trying not to die still takes a ridiculous amount of effort. The priest's steamroller assault demands the reflexes of a coked-up ninja in an absurdly violent brawl. The answer comes tearing through with heavy technological brutality. The British organization simply vomits its sick arsenal in a massive counterattack to delete the aggressor, but his wrecked biology collides with sheer stubbornness. His survival instinct, doped up on faith, violently refuses to accept the coffin. In a brutal kamikaze all-in, he jumps straight into the meat grinder. This creates the perfect ridiculous opening to neuter the vampire's OP weapon in a single strike. This is when Dracula's ass finally puckers. The shock hits him right in the face, revealing that the priest isn't just some fanatical virgin, but a bizarre lab anomaly purpose-built to castrate him. The steamrolling is so nasty that the Lord's shield turns into breadcrumbs. His brain doesn't even process the humiliating beatdown before his guard completely drops. The newbie sees her dark sugar daddy kiss the pavement, and her panic completely short-circuits. Without a shield, she's practically signed the receipt to be the next stake on the freak priest plate. But the fatality gets a violent handbrake turn in a bizarre plot twist. The suited-up boss lady finally shows up on the street and gets her hands dirty personally. The strategy is slammed on the table. She realizes she needs to slap a muzzle on her own mad dog while racing against the clock, aborting an apocalyptic-level diplomatic bloodbath. Things go south real quick right off the bat. Hellsing's ultimate weapon turns into a cheap ornament in the Vatican's hands. The supernatural world's balance of power flips in the blink of an eye. Wasting no time, the target shifts from the boss to the useless intern. The crazy hunter realizes he needs to pull out all the organization's weeds to clear the area. Running from the alpha predator is a no-go. Reality slaps the rookie in the face, punishing her pathetic little jog and tossing her straight back into the nightmare's lap. Terror takes shape in the voice of this crazed zealot. The hunter dictates the terms by force, making it clear the girl is about to get hit with a glorious divine banhammer. The smell of the coffin brings a few neurons back to the girl. She makes the most suicidal decision of the day, deciding to carry her boss's remains on her back to try and save the company. But the wall of reality hits hard again. The arena is jammed with a supernatural Vatican firewall, and the attempt to escape through the back door gets crushed right at the starting line. The sentence is handed down with a spit to the face. The psycho priest corners the poor thing, reducing the girl to a useless target whose only gig is to swallow death quietly. Suddenly, the Vatican's seal of quality goes straight to the trash. The magic barrier locking the place down starts to melt against a bizarre weight coming from inside. The living proof emerges in pure gore. The boss she was carrying refuses the game over and pulls a bizarre regeneration loading screen, proving his immortality hack is turned on. Except there's no warm reunion hug. The big monster dodges her emotional drama, wanting to mess around with a psychological test to see if she actually has the balls. The update patch is thrown on the table. Accepting the blood contract means stopping being a useless NPC and becoming the boss of her own vampiric power. With no time to think, the executioner demands to close the tab with an attitude. The madman's ego is massive, ready to nail the rookie's coffin shut once and for all. That's when the absolute boss lady steps into the yard. The head of Hellsing enters the shootout, warning that no one drops her employees without catching a massive lawsuit. The priest hits the fuck it button on the spot. He puts on his Vatican exterminator shirt and rushes in full force to wipe Hellsing's board of directors off the map. Wiping the floor with the security guards is a walk in the park. The holy roller crushes the meat shield NPCs, showing that pea-shooter shots from extras don't hit pause on his carnage. But the boss didn't become CEO by being a damsel in distress. She ignores the reverse gear and steps up to the giant face-to-face, fully ready to defend the company's name by force. To break the blonde's mind, the psycho dangles the disgusting trophy. He rubs the message in her face that Hellsing's ultimate trump card has already bit the dust. Except the game gloriously flips. Instead of freaking out, the boss puts on her untouchable posture and gives a little smile, catching the pathetic flaw in the assassin's math. The little priest swallows a brick of pure shock, knowing his lethal surgery failed, miserably spits right in the face of every divine law he believed in. The bizarre mutation escalates endlessly across the stage. The madman's victory goes down the drain, revealing the monumental stupidity of facing the original devil who just woke up. The plot twist hammers the enemy's mind. The buff Dracula is English magic's hard mode masterpiece, the Queen's secret nuke programmed to wipe other pests off the map. and instead of throwing a tantrum over losing his head, the blood sugar daddy is laughing his ass off. Getting turned into mincemeat was just a sadistic stand-up routine for him before he starts crushing his prey. British HR lays down the law. The boss throws out the ultimatum. Either he sucks it up now, or braces himself for a monstrous lawsuit that'll spark a world war. The extremist dry swallows his own ego and turns his back. He's forced to retreat to save his Rome squad and warn them that the Brits have the devil on a leash. The divine firewall that swallowed the block completely collapses. The magic barrier melts away, leaving behind only the mess from the insane shitshow that just went down. The trauma truck finally runs over the intern. With the adrenaline drop, the ex-cop's sanity gets violently hammered by the weight of the macabre night. Meanwhile, the boss pulls out the corporate hate calculator. Rome's shot handed Hellsing on a silver platter the perfect trump card to extort the Vatican dry. But Princess Tantrums don't score points with the board. The boss judges the rookie without mercy, growing a massive disgust for this nonsense of clinging to a fragile humanity. Stomping her feet, the spoiled brat cries, demanding respect for her old name. The attempt to fish for some moral high ground fails, proving her status has dropped to the level of a drooling puppy. Destiny's sledgehammer sinks into the skull of the knight. The final message is straight up. Either she throws her little human diploma in the trash and swallows the monstrous fury, or she becomes takeout for the apocalypse. The Vatican's cowardly attack forces Hellsing to pick up the pieces. The dust hasn't even settled yet, but these bastards just won't give them a break. Integra stops beating around the bush at the meeting and gives it to them straight. This ridiculous bloodsucker outbreak isn't just bad luck. Hellsing cracked open the recent corpses like sardine cans to make some sense out of this madness. What they find confirms the nightmare: tracking chips planted inside the beasts. These zombies aren't driven by hunger. They're being assembled and piloted from afar like carnivorous remote control cars. The science behind the neckbite has been hacked. That stupid rule dictating who turns into a vampire and who becomes a drooling zombie is completely dead and gone. Far from the suits, life takes its toll on Seras. The mental breakdown of turning into a disgusting monster is starting to ruin her miserable routine in a way she can no longer hide. A harsh reality check slaps her in the face over this refusal. By acting so squeamish about drinking blood, she's basically slowly killing herself. Her master tells her to just chug the red juice already or die a weakling. The melodrama finally spills out, and the girl admits her ridiculous fear. She thinks that the millisecond she swallows that warm liquid, the last drop of her little human soul will be flushed down the toilet forever. Alucard drops the golden rule of this rotten little world. There's no undo button once you ditch the light. Her humanity card has been permanently revoked, and swallowing her tears right now will save her a lot of headaches. The funeral vibe is shattered when the organization proves they haven't just been sitting on their asses. The elderly butler brings an explosive little gift from the agency's geeks to deal with these new armored zombies. This little toy, forged in pure madness, gives a massive middle finger to the laws of physics. It's a hand cannon so massive and heavy that a normal human would snap their arms firing it, requiring the raw muscle of a demon of the night just to hold it. The gun-toting Santa Claus didn't forget about the girl. Walter makes it crystal clear that this useless recruit needs to stop embarrassing herself and step up in their daily shootouts with a hand cannon of her own. But before they can even test the gear, all hell breaks loose right at headquarters' front door. The boogeyman isn't hiding in the dark alleys anymore, completely shattering the illusion that they had their security under control. The two brothers running this circus are oozing with pure arrogance. They step to the almighty Hellsing not like it's a real threat, but like it's a seasoned steak just waiting to be devoured. The true madness reveals itself at the front gate. They didn't even try to pull a stealthy ninja move. The lunatics just parked an entire legion right at the doorstep, resorting to the most shameless and blatant tactic in history. The little surprise pops out of the box and their harmless civilian cosplay goes straight into the trash. The guardhouse turns into a bloody execution stage where running away is no longer an option for the guards. A wall of lead tears through the security team like wet paper. An absurd firestorm makes sure the front gate turns into a silent graveyard for a bunch of bullet-riddled suckers. Acting like absolute hotshots, the cocky brothers press the doomsday button. The real horde of jacked-up demons gets the green light to storm the front yard and destroy everything in sight. The circus turns into a full-blown military apocalypse. Hellsing isn't dealing with cute little vampires, but with undead soldiers armed to the teeth. It's a plague that thinks like an army and slaughters like the devil himself. Up in the fancy office, their safety bubble completely melts away. The agency's useless board of directors nearly shits their pants when they realize the zombie apocalypse just kicked down their front door. Down in the hallways, security goes straight down the drain. The toy soldiers turn into instant meat paste up against this rotten freight train that feels no pain and couldn't give a shit about mercy. The cherry on top of this shitcake is that these aren't your average dumb zombies. The bastards are using elite military SWAT tactics, making the Night Guard's revolvers look like rusty water guns. The boss lady gulps down the absolute nightmare unfolding before her. Some sadistic geek didn't just breed zombies in captivity, they shoved an assault rifle into every corpse's hands and unleashed them right in the faces of the top brass. The mastermind behind this invasion is out here playing 4D chess. The suit's VIP chopper gets blown to bits out there just for kicks, sealing off their only possible escape route through the skies. The ultimate slap in the face comes when the villain hacks their radio. He answers the comm straight from a sea of blood, just to rub this humiliating defeat right in the fat faces of this pathetic leadership. With the big bosses practically pissing their pants, the invader crushes any remaining hope. He gives them a heads up that his zombie apocalypse is going to kick down their VIP door in 2 seconds flat to devour every last one of them. Seeing that their uniformed squad was nothing but window dressing and ended up as dead meat, the boss throws the rulebook out the window. She risks the agency's ass by unleashing the only psychopathic monster they still have roaming loose in the basement. The sly old man pulls a plan out of his hat, crawl through the air vents to rescue the rich folks, dodging the zombie traffic. Meanwhile, the other two absolute lunatics will act as lethal bait for the slaughterhouse. The boss demands brutal retaliation, and the doomsday button is pressed with pleasure. The menu now is pure genocide, where every invading piece of trash must be turned into bloody meat paste on the Persian rugs. The horror show finally hits play. The Dark Lord is practically drooling to test out his new firepower on these suckers' faces, while the elderly butler dusts off his pent-up malice, dying to show off his sadistic legendary skills. Surrounded by this absolute orgy of violence, the terrified police girl finally connects the dots. She realizes that her so-called human defenders are psychopaths 1,000 times more twisted than the creatures of the night they came to kill. The invasion plan is going off without a hitch, and the radio confirms that the initial slaughter of the defenses was a brutal success. The false promises of security have completely crumbled. The real motive behind this grotesque massacre soon becomes clear. It's not just a tactical mission, but an insane desire to test their might against the absurd legend that protects the place. Reality smashes the leadership right in the face in the boardroom. Despair hits hard, and the head suit realizes that diplomacy becomes a joke when death is already climbing the stairs. However, the arrival of the true rear guard puts an end to the mess. The imposing presence of the old butler instantly changes the vibe, signaling that the main line of defense has locked down the hallway. The tactics shifts from a mediocre retreat to total annihilation. The building is now a slaughterhouse where the rule isn't to save the furniture, but to slice up any bastard who tries to break in. Meanwhile, Jan Valentine keeps strolling down the hallway, intoxicated by how easy the mission is. The lunatic's audacity goes through the roof, walking around like he already owns the place. But in a millisecond, a sickening click in the hallway wipes the smile off everyone's faces. The official welcoming committee has clocked in, and this free-for-all is about to get very expensive. Walter does the honors and makes his role in the house crystal clear. To the silver-haired old man, the mob of the undead in there is just rotting garbage trying to stain his boss's expensive carpet. A wave of despair floods the villain's trembling knees. Acting on primal instinct, he grabs every piece of lead he can to machine gun the suited monster before his own throat gets slit. The wall of bullets crumbles at the drop of a hat. The Jurassic idea of stopping the granddaddy of terror with gunfire yields to gravity, proving that standard tactics are a total waste. Ignoring enemy fire, the hallway proves to be a closed coffin for the invaders. The lethal machine crushes the squad's pawns, slicing them all up with Swiss punctuality and pure sadism. Jan's scrambled brain chokes on his own fake composure. Seeing his empire fall, he goes completely unhinged and collapses into total system failure as he watches his henchmen get massacred. Even so, the crippled horde marches happily into death's embrace. Suffering from a fatal allergy to survival, the useless flock keeps throwing itself straight into the macabre meat grinder of the narrow hallway. Behind the scenes, the order for the tactical apocalypse is approved over the radio. The disgusting job of scrubbing away the invading biological dust lands right on the defensive squad rookie's agenda. The sniper takes her main position with her colossal weapon. This lethal behemoth becomes the supreme nightmare strangler, ready to stamp a do not enter pass right onto the zombies' chests. A massive blast erupts from the shadows, shaking the building's very foundation. The shot destroys the hallway, sweeping the front line with an express pain that leaves no room for crying, and the cruel trick finally unfolds. While panic melts the invaders from the front, the building's true lethal abomination slides up real smooth from behind, cornering the prey. The delusion of being an omnipotent god gets drop-kicked. The sucker goes into shock, realizing he got caught in a pathetic tactical sandwich, swallowing the hard truth that his control over the invasion was pure illusion. Drowning in dumb instinct, the punk throws all his chips into a vengeful tantrum. The lunatic charges through the tunnel, trampling everything, desperately trying to wipe out the target to take back the upper hand. But the house's overpowered old man literally couldn't give less of a shit. He had already read this rough draft of an attack, intercepting the charge with a humiliating robotic coldness. The circus shuts its doors for good with the agency taking the driver's seat. The rookie stamps the punk's face into the floor, bringing back police immobilization tactics to pin the useless beast to the ground. Focused, the old man knows perfectly well that a deranged, petty thug couldn't afford this many henchmen alone. The stench of a mastermind pulling the strings fills the room, and tearing that name out of him becomes the priority. The suited inquisitor steps on the gas of mental terror with no bluffs. The promise of turning him into human Lego sets the mood, making it clear that spitting out the truth is the only way to avoid being dismantled live. Completely broken, the tough guy vomits the truth, and the scale of this sick mess comes to light. The grand prize of this bloody little show was tearing off the head of the dark abomination locked in the basement. The cruel prank throws acid on the defense's celebration. The carnage in the penthouse was just theater to hide the real threat that went down to the basement, where the platinum demon finally came face to face with his soulmate. The captured punching bag doesn't even flinch. Even mashed into the floor after the bloodbath, the bastard just laughs in everyone's faces. The sick truth comes to light. The slaughter upstairs was just a distraction. These scumbags' real target was always to breach the organization's basement and wipe out their ultimate weapon. Down in the base's sewers, the invader throws subtlety out the window and announces his arrival. The psycho acts like he owns the place, screaming and proving he's no mere lackey. Ignoring all common sense, he calls out for the monster. The arrogant hunter challenges the legend to ditch the dark little room and come take a punch to the face. The dark hallway turns into a red carpet straight to hell. The shadow takes shape, proving the monster never ran away. He was just setting the stage to crush the rookie. The Foundation's overpowered weapon stares danger in the face with pure boredom. For someone who's ruled the roost for ages, all this killing is just annoying background noise. To prove he's not all bark, the guy takes off his shirt and unleashes the juice. He bets his bizarre upgrades put him leagues ahead of that dark old dinosaur. The strike lands with the weight of a runaway truck. His genius idea is to crush the old man with an endless barrage of punches, ensuring a quick end to this joke. But taking this brutal beating just sparks a contagious joy. Not giving a fuck, the beast embraces the massacre with a sick smile of someone who's loving the party. The beast's body takes a purely grotesque pounding. Any 2-bit vampire would have been turned to instant mush getting crushed by such an absurd brute force. Thinking he won, the invader spits out his last breath in a final absurd leap. The raving lunatic wants to wipe the old geezer out for good until there's not even dust left. A dead-on hit. The strike theoretically tears through the boss's last line of defense and seems to throw in the towel on this senseless circus. But truly dying is a massive joke to the King of Darkness. Even with his brains turned to mush, he raises a little finger, sarcastically announcing that the warm-up is finally over. The payback comes with a gravity so sickening it bends the concrete walls. The hallway turns into a death trap, mercilessly grinding down the fool's defenses. While the brawl spirals out of control in the sewer, the suits clean house upstairs. The brass's goal is to drag out the whole truth behind this suicide attack. Even captured, the smartass terrorist doesn't flinch. He puts on a front, rubbing the reason he's there right in the boss's face with his royalty complex. Trophy in hand, the big guy drops a nasty bombshell on the rookie's lap. The poor girl, tossed to the floor, freaks out over her existential crisis and the macabre choices of her own genetics. But karma doesn't spare fools, and the agency's underestimated grandpa shows his claws. Turning their backs on the butler earns them a lethal counterattack that tears the invaders' playbook to shreds. The bloodbath reaches delirious proportions. The home team dominates the playground with brute force, shredding the terrorist squad with terrifying precision and flipping the board. The fierce boss lady waits like a statue of ice. The invader discovers that his little genius marathon was just a direct path into her own private slaughterhouse. Not on the defensive at all, the woman running the whole show sits in her chair dictating the rules. Without blinking, she signs the death warrant of the clown who thought it'd be fun to invade her turf. The retaliation is pure, unadulterated sadism and sends an explicit message. The sucker pays the price, swallowing a custom-made punishment designed to obliterate him. Back in the basement, the buff little brother's cockiness starts melting like butter. He notices the ring has turned into a freak show, and his advantage vanished in smoke. The agency's overpowered mascot decides he's had enough messing around. He chooses to rip off his own leash's seals, unleashing a weird energy to show the real price of poking the devil. The monster's thrill isn't just about winning, it's about grinding the invader's soul into the pavement. He gives a sadistic tutorial on the freak's food chain, rubbing the rookie's insignificance right in his face. The very plaster of the place melts. A bizarre darkness locks the guy away from everything, sucking his last 2 brain cells into a mental microwave full of pure, suffocating despair. The bill comes due beautifully with a godlike beatdown. The strike permanently snuffs out that little theater of false hopes, which only seasoned the invading trash's despair before the slaughter. Trying to fight back now becomes the joke of the year. The brutal smash ensures the useless prick's deletion in one dry, savage blow. The invader's favorite toy gets neutered in a humiliating way. His only chance of attack melts on the spot, sealing the asshole's total ruin. The sprawled-out stiff stamps his one-way ticket. The sewer quietly swallows the mess, sweeping under the rug the irreversible stupidity of the fool who stepped to the wrong monster. Reality smacks the invader in the face. All that big bad villain swagger evaporates instantly, giving way to sheer terror and a flight instinct after the invasion goes horribly wrong. The brutal shock of defeat forces the invader to swallow the absurd difference in power between them. The hunter and the hunted have officially switched roles for good. The entire atmosphere grows heavy, suffocating any ounce of hope. The true ancient nightmare kept by the organization breaks free from its chains, revealing the monstrous abomination it truly is. The grim verdict is handed down to the defeated invader. Having shown absolutely no honor in the fight, he is reduced to a completely humiliated worm on his knees. The ancient monster makes a point to emphasize the massive gap between them with a brutal finishing move. The punishment goes far beyond killing, ensuring physical annihilation and the total humiliation of the invader's memory. Elsewhere in the mansion, the situation spirals wildly out of the cop's control. Out of ammo and surrounded, she realizes she's become a free snack for this disgusting horde of the undead. However, her survival instinct awakens something incredibly dark within the girl. The weeping little victim suddenly disappears, giving way to a bloodthirsty and ruthless huntress. The massacre unfolds with absolutely zero moral restraint. The rookie's deadly, overpowered rampage is so insane and chaotic that even the organization's boss watches the destruction in awe. Seeing the recruit dive headfirst into pure psychopathy, the leader steps right into her line of fire. She needs to drag this madwoman back to sanity before things get worse. The leader immediately imposes her presence and blocks the path head-on. Through a physical shock, she rubs it in the rookie's face that the fight is over and there's been enough bloodshed. The reality check resets her brain, and the guilt hits her like a ton of bricks. With her normal mind restored, the girl is utterly terrified by the trauma of the carnage she herself caused. The mess is contained, and the focus shifts to the captured mastermind, whose illusion of a quick death has gone out the window. The boss demands answers, promising slow torture until he spills who organized the invasion. Even before the interrogation starts to heat up, the organization's great monster jumps ahead. The master vampire shows up with a sadistic smile to ensure this unresolved matter is settled by force. The mission is to find out which obscure cult footed the bill for this damn attack, but the prisoner on the ground only responds with a filthy, hysterical giggle, mocking their threats. The loser then plays his trump card. He reveals he's nothing more than a living flash drive. His entire body is live streaming the failure to the big bosses hiding in the dark. Without a second thought, the lunatic hits his own self-destruct button. It's a crazy, irreversible move to seal his silence, ensuring no one ever finds his true faction. The scumbag prisoner burns up and turns to a crisp right in front of everyone. The organization's crew is left jaw-dropped and startled, having just lost the main living witness to the attack. Even as he melts in flames, the punk's fanaticism screams loud. He relishes his moral victory and spits out one last taunt, screaming a bizarre name that sounds like an omen of the end of the world. The shock of the revelation hits the leader like a runaway train. She processes the name spewed by the suicidal man and understands the cursed historical weight of the threat that has just awakened. The situation worsens when the government suits show up demanding answers for the failures. The leader has to adopt a cold posture to swallow the fact that the mansion's security has been breached. Suddenly, the true culprit behind the security breach is exposed in the room. The blame for the bloodbath falls on an inside turncoat who gets severely roughed up and realizes the game is over. In this cursed organization, betrayal costs you your head instantly. The informant's death sentence is carried out at point-blank range on the dirty floor, cutting out the internal tumor with raw violence. With the house cleaned, the tables turn and the defensive stance goes in the trash. The leader decides that the mysterious group will pay in blood, officially declaring open season for a brutal hunt. Far away in the real hideout, a gang of lunatics loses their minds in a bizarre party. An army of fanatics celebrates and cheers insanely after watching the attack from the front row. And that's when the big boss of this dark force tells his followers to shut their mouths. He lays down the law and hits play on the next level of madness, ready to unleash an unprecedented war. The invasion took a heavy toll, and as the dust settles, it leaves Hellsing with absolute devastation that's impossible to hide. The big boss, Integra, now tastes the bitter flavor of failure slipping right through her fingers. But therapy doesn't win wars, so the boss sucks it up. She turns her guns on the suckers who threw this little party. The time for melodrama is over, and the plan now is to hunt the puppet master straight to hell. The counterattack stems from the single crumb left behind by the invaders. A simple name that sounded like absolute nonsense now forces the agency to open a hell of an investigative file. Shock shakes the room when the penny drops. The monsters in their crosshairs aren't romanticized vampires, but the absolute scum of history's worst dictatorship. The fascist threat of the past has merged with bloodthirsty war machines. With no elite soldiers left, the solution comes straight from the gutter. To replace their losses, the agency bypasses the military's bureaucracy and decides to bring in fresh blood by hiring a squad of dirty mercenaries. When the mission brief drops, the new squad laughs like a pack of hyenas. Getting orders to hunt fairy tale monsters sounds like the absolute delusion of a boss who's smoking crack. The blonde then shoots the harsh truth right between the squad's eyes. The fight they just signed up for is a grotesque bloodbath. They're going up against endgame bosses who shrug off grenades and outright break the laws of physics. Since apocalyptic talk isn't enough to convince these gun-toting grunts, the game levels up. It's time to shove the absurd right down their throats with a nice live demonstration of the supernatural. Except the ultimate boogeyman that walks into the room generates pure secondhand embarrassment. This rookie's clumsiness and goofy face instantly vaporize all the respect and fear the brass wanted to instill in the troops. Given the green light to act, the girl turns on zero fucks given mode against the mercenary leader. Without even raising her guard, she uses the laziest tactic on earth, swatting the tough guy away like a pesky mosquito. Cold sweat finally runs down the squad's necks. The catastrophic damage caused by such a lazy strike teaches them the hard way that big biceps are utterly useless against a walking cheat code. To make everyone completely shit their pants and show who's really in charge, the Lord of Darkness enters the chat. The arrival of Dracula himself reduces every tough mercenary to a mere panicked crying baby. The bloodsucker lets out a massive yawn of boredom as he sizes up the new security detail. To him, this gang isn't even fit to be cheap garden fertilizer. They're just a bunch of walking dead meat ready for the slaughter. The humiliation show is interrupted by an emergency delivered in a fancy envelope. It's a big enough shitstorm for the boss to drop the rookies and focus on figuring out which psychopath sent the message. The sender is the Holy Vatican, the agency's mortal enemies. The church's secret mafia has come knocking, forcing these sworn haters to team up just to survive the apocalypse. That's exactly when the dirty game of chess truly kicks off. After having her headquarters shot up like Swiss cheese, Integra stews in neutral territory for an absurd meeting. She has to face her worst ideological rivals while still picking up the pieces of her own home. The passive-aggressive mail that sparked this mess came straight from enemy leadership. The audacity of sending a polite invitation right after trying to slit Hellsing's throat is the epitome of supernatural hypocrisy. The deadline finally hits. Integra's neurotic British punctuality clashes violently with the enemy delegation's sheer disregard, setting off a flashing red warning. The illusion of control shatters when a sudden intrusion breaches the security perimeter. It becomes instantly obvious that the Vatican delegation plays by its own rules, not giving a shit about discretion protocols. With zero patience for this circus, Integra ruthlessly cuts the act short. She immediately sets an aggressive territorial boundary, demanding they drop the pathetic farce and get down to a wartime tone. The Catholic head honcho finally spreads his wings, exuding sickening arrogance. The guy flaunts the blind confidence of someone with a 1,000-year-old mafia protecting his ass from the English leader's barking. Blind fanaticism runs over the civilized small talk like a runaway freight train. The snob spits in their faces that frying millions of Protestant English civilians would be a divine favor, proving their hatred is rooted to the core. But this inflated ego shoots itself in the foot and hits the perfect panic button. The barrier of respect is shattered, forcing Hellsing's pet monster to creep out of the shadows and swallow that audacity whole. Hellsing's head vampire doesn't waste the chance to trample all over their faith. The Vatican idiot now realizes he messed with the ultimate alpha predator, and the scent of him becoming dead meat floods the room. But the suit reveals he didn't walk into the beast's lair unarmed. Anticipating blood, the church brought along its own hidden attack dog, yelling to back off before his head gets ripped off. Just by catching a whiff of his archenemy, England's supreme demon instantly stops giving a shit about the whining bureaucrat. His lust for slaughter turns into an instant, brutal, and beautifully personal obsession. The contract for a beatdown is signed. Whipping out an arsenal of biblical blades serves as a giant middle finger. The buff priest's sole job right now is to toss that immortal British legend straight into a blender. Stand-down orders from the boss mean absolutely nothing to the psychopathic paladin. The brute's genocidal hunger ignores and runs over any pathetic rules his own faction tried to make up to leash the beast. Integra swallows hard as the little charade completely falls apart. The priest's madness overrides all treaties, and he decides the bloody carnage is going down right there on the carpet, going all in without mercy. And out of nowhere, the promised slaughter gets hit with a massive bucket of cold water. A ridiculous interruption by a bunch of useless extras ruins the violent vibe, pausing the bloodbath out of sheer stupid ignorance. The lethal duel goes down the drain, turning into an absolute joke. Mistaking the gothic apocalypse for some cheap public cosplay completely kills the two gorillas' murderous mood, creating a wonderfully painful and comedic humiliation. With the brawl called off, the English now have to sift through the diplomatic garbage. The focus shifts to patching up the holes in their own house and swallowing the massive audacity the backstabbing priests dared to throw at them. The juicy bait is tossed onto the table without hesitation. The suits confess they hold the golden puzzle piece that's been driving the English crazy, hijacking all bargaining power straight into Rome's sacred pockets. The cherry on top of this rotten cake is served with pleasure. The war changes scale in a snap, spitting out the fact that the real villain behind this entire mess is an angry ghost looking to collect a debt. The bill drops on the table in a flash. To spill the secret, the blackmailer demands total immunity. He demands the British government turn a blind eye and wipe clean the massive criminal record his goons just racked up in the city. But just as the handshake is about to happen, the lunatic pushes his luck. He decides to test the blonde's patience, throwing in one last pathetic and sadistic demand before opening his damn mouth. And the Iron Lady throws her ego into the fire, bowing her head to a bureaucrat's whim. It becomes painfully clear that shielding her own country is worth 1,000 times more than her proud lioness ego. She goes for an Oscar and stages her humiliation in a flawless little show. Integra licks the boots of protocol, begging for answers without leaving a single loophole for the idiots to back out of spilling the secret. The act works, and the dirty deal goes through. The bell rings for the ultimate intel drop, the wonderful moment when this puzzle from hell finally gets a proper frame. The villain's rotten face steps into the spotlight. These aren't just generic vampires. They're the remnants of an entire Nazi army that stewed in the shadows for decades, just waiting for the alarm to sound so they could start slicing people up all over again. How did these parasites cheat death? The stuffed shirt whips out his spyglass and explains that the whole gang fled to South America, carrying stolen gold to build a hidden Nazi amusement park in the shadows. It's at this exact moment the suit drops the nuke. The Vatican sponsored their little grim getaway with a red carpet. This filthy confession of a historical war crime is slammed onto the table like a loaded hand of poker. Far from London's nervous freakout, down in the villain's tropical hellhole, the vibe is bizarrely chill. Millennium's top brass listens to the news of their blown cover with the same excitement as reading a medication label. Their egos are through the roof. Even with their secret out, the Nazis are swimming in glorious arrogance, knowing full well that this tiny data leak is just dust compared to the giant meat grinder they've been cooking up during their vacation. For the faction's chubby supreme leader, the Major, watching his rivals swallow the bait is exactly what he prayed for. The maniac is drooling over the chance to plunge the world into a giant blender of corpses, stamping a VIP pass on his genocide party. At the Vatican, the suits at the top are trying to digest the chaos. The dust from a disastrous diplomatic meeting hasn't even settled, and the harsh reality of a new threat is already kicking their damn doors down. The strategy of those geezers in Rome is pure cynical cowardice. Their plan is to act from the shadows, letting Hellsing and Millennium slaughter each other so the church can walk away with clean hands when it's all over. Far from there, the funeral-like gloom at Hellsing is kicked aside by Alucard himself. Like an old mangy hound, the vampire knows exactly the level of chaos this disgusting resurrection brings. The conversation shifts straight to the bizarre intel that shocked everyone. Confirming Millennium's true identity doesn't just scare them, it flips the whole damn game board over. The big joke is that everyone thought they had buried this Nazi trash for good. They wiped this organization off the map themselves decades ago, or at least that's what the fools thought. But enough whining. Hellsing needs to swallow its wounded pride and take action. They decide to take the Vatican suit's bait, aiming this insane manhunt straight at the blistering heat of South America. When it's time to throw down, bringing conventional soldiers along would just be dead weight. The mission calls for pure, unadulterated brute force, forcing them to hire mercenaries for the bloodbath. Out on the training field, the mercenary leader is already losing his mind over his squad's sheer incompetence. Captain Pip demands impossible miracles, spitting out the tension of the bizarre mission that lies ahead. The arrogant bastard mocks Hellsing, claiming only a freak could handle their standards. That jab hits the rookie vampire right where it hurts, and she decides to shut the merc up with an absurd display of raw power. Without blinking an eye, she unleashes an absurd barrage of firepower that would turn any normal soldier's bones to dust. The damn limits of human capability are kicked to the curb without an ounce of mercy. Obliterating the target in one go proves that Hellsing plays in a bizarrely higher league. Rubbing this overpowered strength in their faces perfectly does the job of humiliating the clueless newbies. The reality check hits the captain hard. His sarcastic macho posture vanishes the exact second the idiot realizes the brutal gap between his little squad and the real monster standing before him. Meanwhile, in the eerie corridors of the mansion, the mood shifts completely. Far from the shouting on the training grounds, the real bosses fix their eyes on a profoundly older and more bizarre mystery. The original vampire reflects on the essence of his own fledgling. He notices a crazy complexity within her that shatters the label of Seras being just a mere lapdog turned into a bloodthirsty monster, but the clock is ticking for her. That damn thirst is unstoppable, and embracing her own monstrosity is a bitter pill she'll inevitably have to swallow to keep from turning to dust once and for all. Except the trip to South America hits a bureaucratic wall because of this. Since Seras is still resisting her dark side, her classic mystical weaknesses make crossing the ocean on a regular plane an impossible challenge. To get around the problem, a bizarrely archaic and pragmatic tactic is greenlit. A trick as old as dirt becomes the only way to solve the drama of Seras's travel arrangements. Integra shows up in person, expecting to find a disciplined display of elite military tactics. Instead, the absolute circus waiting for her on the other side of the door ruthlessly crushes any illusion of professionalism. The logistics required some macabre smuggling, stuffing monsters and weapons into the cargo hold like cheap contraband. This bizarre claustrophobic confinement exposes a pathetic makeshift fix to bypass the airport's X-rays. This is where the money spent on those useless mercenaries finally pays off. Using sketchy shortcuts from the gritty underworld, they secure the ghost flight operation this mess requires in a completely illegal fashion. Even dressed in a ridiculous disguise, Alucard's killer instinct is practically frothing at the mouth. This whole little charade is just a mere formality, revealing a sadistic arrogance that guarantees their victory in a terrifying way. The freak show culminates in the final order. The loyal hound reaffirms his leash, ruthlessly stamping a one-way ticket to hell for any idiot who so much as breathes in their direction down in South America. The Hellsing team arrives in Brazil and sets up base in a ridiculously luxurious hotel. For a covert mission, they couldn't care less about flying under the radar or keeping a low profile. When hotel policy threatens to get in the way, vampire hypnosis comes into play. A clerk's brain is forcibly wiped to erase any shred of common sense. The pathetic part is that they actually think they're in control. In reality, the enemy's spy network is already monitoring their every move, watching them march straight into a trap. In the presidential suite, a gigantic, sinister coffin ruins any civilized atmosphere. It's a chilling reminder that humanity's ultimate weapon against evil is canned death itself. In another room, the rookie swallows the harshest truth possible. Her frantic mind finally accepts that she's become a slave to the darkness, and there's no going back to her normal life. But the vampire master snaps her out of this pathetic trance without an ounce of pity. He doesn't feign concern over the chaos erupting outside. As far as he's concerned, the amusement park has just opened. Outside, the enemy has thrown the local police's own special ops teams right at Hellsing's throat. The silent espionage is over. The stage is now set for an all-out firefight. For the immortal sadist, diplomacy is just nonsense for the weak. If they're picking a fight, he's more than ready to turn that hotel into his own private slaughterhouse. The freak show is complete when the TV crews crash the party. The covert operation turns into a blood-soaked reality show broadcast live on national television. The fake news spread by the media has already condemned our anti-heroes before the first shot is even fired. The organization's bulletproof image begins to melt away right before the public's eyes. With the fiasco being aired on TV for the whole world to see, the leaders in London go into utter shock. There's no hiding this disaster from the press or sweeping it under the rug anymore. However, the organization's boss doesn't back down under the pressure. Her order is to tear up the Constitution. If the enemy wanted a live war, they'd better prepare the body bags. Meanwhile, the villains behind it all are betting exactly on the monster's uncontrollable psychopathy. They're certain the vampire will gleefully slaughter the innocent cops who were just following orders. The mastermind behind the trap smiles at the perfect psychological siege. The vampire will either slice up the cops and become a global terrorist, or he'll be gunned down without fighting back. There is no way out without a guaranteed bloodbath. Fake news spreads chaos across the globe while the Catholics watch the circus catch fire in Brazil from the front row. Alexander Anderson watches the broadcast, knowing damn well which British vampire is trapped in that hotel. He laughs at the misfortune of others, loving the freak show that's about to unfold. Far away, the true evil genius behind this prank remains untouchable. With an absurd silver tongue and well-crafted lies, he turns the local police into disposable puppets. The battalion gears up, ready to die without asking any questions. The entire block turns into a completely isolated pressure cooker. The order is to lock down the area and cut all communication with the outside world. With the press shooed away and the suckers buying the terrorism story, the stage is set for a clandestine slaughter. Ignorant of the real danger, the clueless cops march through the hotel posing as SWAT. They follow the manual to the letter, choreographing every step under the illusion that they are taking down mere mortal criminals. All this tactical overconfidence is just going to make the upcoming humiliation that much worse. But the violent breach crashes into a bizarre funeral-like atmosphere. Instead of meeting armed resistance, the squad dives into a crushing and unsettling silence. This sudden calm shatters the heroic fantasy of the toy soldiers, evaporating everyone's swagger. The little surprise at the end of the hallway kicks their sanity straight into the trash. Coming face to face with the trench-coated monster proves the mission's planning was a tragic joke. Their shocked expressions make it clear that their pellet guns won't save anyone from this killing machine. The big boss they swore they'd arrest simply steals the scene, totally chill and without breaking a sweat. Alucard doesn't raise his hands or show any intention of begging for mercy. Posing like an urban legend, he rubs it in the soldiers' faces that they were always the prey. And out of nowhere, pure despair pulls all their triggers at once. The geared-up cops spew out as much lead as possible, thinking that pulling a Rambo will get the job done. They blow through all their ammo, swearing up and down that they're turning the threat into Swiss cheese. The hail of bullets destroys the entire room in a deafening frenzy. The cops shoot until their last drop of testosterone dries up, deluding themselves into thinking they won the fight based purely on the size of their guns. The smoke hides the target, giving them the false sense that the nightmare is over. But physics simply gives up on working, and the corpse rises again. The madman's bullet-ridden body stitches itself back together, proving that their epic firing squad was just a back massage. Badass demon mode turns on, letting them know a biblical beatdown is about to be served. With his face clean once again, the ancient vampire glares at the troops with disdain. He condemns the whole squad with an intimidating speech, handpicking exactly who has permission to try and kill kill him. It's the official stamp that the entire squad just failed, not dying 101. The bloodbath gets an unhinged, supernatural upgrade. Crazy shadows sprout out of nowhere, turning the hunter into the ultimate apex predator about to feast on the uniformed squad. Nobody in there can pretend they have their hands on the steering wheel of this runaway car anymore. The fight turns into a video game on easy mode for the devil. The sadist literally unlocks his hidden skills while laughing at their misery, stretching out the massacre without mercy. His only goal now is to wring screams of panic from the fools who had the audacity to kick down his door. The only master escape route is completely walled off by darkness. The boogeyman makes sure no coward can escape the slaughter alive. The depressing little hotel hallway morphs into the perfectly lethal trap to corner what's left of the riot cops. The slaughter is delivered almost like a macabre fetish. The cops' lives are slurped through a straw in the middle of the shadows, burying their arrogance for good. The useless idea that puny humans could ever step up to a magical demon melts right along with the blood on the floor. Absurd panic slaps one of the last cornered survivors right in the face. Putting a bullet in his own head becomes the genius salvation to avoid becoming the monster's dinner. Except the coward freezes up from fear, lacking even the courage to pull the trigger and end it all. But the drama cuts to a purely comedic vibe. Ignoring the brutal slaughterhouse in the hallway, the rookie vampire girl pops into the scene flying. She lands looking totally lost, 100% out of sync with the bloodbath going down in the hotel. The blonde finally realizes the colossal scale of the butchery. Seeing the hotel walls painted with blood rubs her new boss's sadistic brutality right in her face. This ethical shock short-circuits the poor girl's neurons, making her freeze in place before the tasteless bloody painting. Throwing a fit and unable to hold back her tears, the spoiled girl tries to spit out a moral lesson. She begs her boss to realize the line of common sense he crossed by dicing up human extras. But the devil's tolerance for this humanitarian lecture is just like her willingness to work. Absolutely zero. The boss decides to stomp all over her cuteness with an ice-cold response. He rubs it in the rookie's face that these guys stormed the building drooling for blood and put their own lives in a game of Russian roulette. In his little black book, there are no poor victims, only losers whose HP bars hit zero. The psychological pressure he puts on her is colossal. The big bad vampire humiliates Seras' hypocrisy, reminding her that she only accepted the dark gig to avoid kicking the bucket. He basically yells at her to stop playing the scared Disney princess and finally embrace the bizarre swagger of her new resume. With a dry shout, he extends a VIP invitation to surf the wave of pure bloody insanity. And only now does the dummy realize that her lifeline to the normal world has been burned forever. All that's left is to march straight into hell's most cursed black hole, following her boss. The communication blackout in Brazil finally breaks. After all the chaos and tactical isolation, a signal leaks onto the emergency line calling for help. In London, the leadership immediately understands the weight of this call. It is the only chance to uncover the depth of the rabbit hole and the conspiracy armed against the organization. Chaos incarnate himself decides to call the highest authority. Instead of acting on his own, the vampire drops the bomb and places the fate of the mission in his master's hands. The news reveals the worst-case scenario for the agency. Local security forces have been dispatched against them, turning what was supposed to be a covert operation into a diplomatic nightmare swarming with human soldiers. The weight of this revelation crushes the commander's conscience. Ordering the hunt for monsters is routine, but rubber stamping an order to slaughter human police officers crosses a heavy moral line. On the other end of the line, the bloodsucker mercilessly taunts his boss. He tests her ruthlessness, demanding to know if she has the guts to get her hands dirty and take the blame for a bloodbath. She finally pushes past her hesitation and embraces the darkness in her heart. Every ounce of humanity is cast aside as she dons the mantle of the monster that leadership demands. With the decision made, there is no turning back. Morality is discarded, and the explicit order to begin the massacre and wipe them all off the map is confirmed. Hearing the authorization over the radio, the vampire in red throws a giddy fit of joy. He finally receives from his master the cruel and sick green light he so desperately wanted to hear. Meanwhile, the rookie girl remains completely ignorant of what is unfolding. Blind to the newly signed genocide order, the police girl simply holds her weapon, trying not to get in the way. Not wanting his bloody script ruined, he orders the rookie to fall back and stay out of it. It is the perfect excuse to clear the hallway and get his hands dirty in this sick business all by himself. Outside, the tactical team strikes a tough guy pose with their rifles. They carry the swagger of those who control the siege and think they are about to take down easy targets in a quick breach. But their military arrogance evaporates into thin air in an instant. Their tactical training is rendered useless against the overwhelming demonic oppression that begins leaking out of the room. The monster opens his arms like a conductor from hell, mocking the generic militia. He challenges the invaders face to face, throwing the door wide open to their own doom. His crushing presence mercilessly hammers the minds of the agents. Fear strips away all logic, forcing human insanity to erupt in the face of an impossible creature. The mad dog finally slips his leash. The bloodbath begins as he goes full steamroller, charging forward to slaughter the troop with extreme violence. The power balance in this firefight is pathetic. All the little SWAT shooting lessons melt like butter before the brutal immortality of the British vampire. The breach spirals into a sadistic festival of humiliation. The vampire displays a twisted thrill as he grinds up and dismembers the men, laughing at human impotence. The weight of the butchery finally leaves nothing but silence in the air. The entire generic squad is turned into dead meat, rubbing the world's face in the cruelty of leaving 0 survivors. Far away, the true architect of the trap smiles in the dark. The mastermind listens to the massacre of his own troops with satisfaction, as this bloodbath was merely a sacrifice for his master plan. Panic finally sets in. It becomes blindingly obvious that trying to ambush Hellsing was astronomically stupid, and despair swallows these grunts whole. Imminent death comes trampling over whatever shitty plan they had. While the slaughterhouse runs wild, a psychopathic calm dominates behind the scenes. For those watching this mess from afar, the human carnage is just a cheesy Sunday B-movie, a ridiculous spectacle where the suffering of these losers turns into pure entertainment. Throwing normal humans to the slaughter has already lost its charm for these conspirators. To really turn up the heat, the next move is obvious. Go hard mode and drop a real supernatural beast to go toe-to-toe with the big bad vampire. Back at the slaughterhouse, the strike team's salvation seems to lie in a shitty elevator. They bet all their chips on this metal box, swearing to God that running away will magically save their asses from this nightmare. But their will to live goes up in smoke when retribution catches up to them in the hallway. The hunt goes from self-defense to a sick execution. The vampire ruthlessly teaches them that breaking into his house was the worst idea in history. Things hit boiling point as the amateur squad smashes the elevator buttons in pure desperation. They try to lock down this tin coffin at all costs before the psychopath in red shows up to collect the rent. Except fear fries the synapses of one of the agents. In an absolute spasm of stupidity, the dumbass makes the fatal decision to lock his own salvation from the inside, giving 0 fucks about the hysterical screams of his buddies left outside. Pinned against the locked doors, the psychological defenses of the abandoned turn to Swiss cheese. Dracula's terrifying aura obliterates any shred of courage they had left, leaving absolutely nothing but sheer panic. Payback for the break-in comes like a sledgehammer to the forehead. Alucard responds with a hand cannon so overpowered it disintegrates the suckers before they can even process the pain of their botched ambush. Inside, the lone survivor's last spark of hope goes straight down the drain. The cursed arm punching right through the elevator door proves there isn't a lock in the universe capable of holding back this unhinged freak. The matchbox turns into a literal human meat grinder. Riot shields and tactical helmets crumple like tinfoil as the monster steamrolls right over them. Game over, plain and simple. With his pile of corpses all set, turning a doorknob just loses its appeal. The psychopath makes a point of busting through with maximum brute force, completely demolishing the wall that separated his bizarre masterpiece from the street. Outside, the idiots on the sidewalk are completely clueless. Nosy reporters and local cops swear up and down it's just another boring hostage situation, blissfully unaware of the monstrosity waiting for them. That is, until the peaceful live broadcast gets brutally derailed. An absurd freak show shatters through the building's glass, freezing the faces of those vultures on the street, leaving them entirely paralyzed by shock. It's a revival of vintage impalement put on display just to rub the defeated squad's humiliation in everyone's faces. It's a macabre warning sign glaring right at any idiot who even dreams of pissing off this monster of darkness. But the survival instinct of this useless breed is pathetic, and the TV vultures prioritize ratings over running for their lives. This sick obsession with filming the carnage instantly turns the exposed slaughterhouse into a bloody reality show. With the circus beautifully decorated and the idiots drooling, the front doors finally get blown to bits. The owner of this macabre madhouse decides it's his time to shine, making a triumphant entrance down a catwalk of corpses. The cops outside are instantly reduced to doormats, shaking in their boots before the unleashed monster. This sickening circus is a twisted love letter, letting the suits know that their invitation to the apocalypse has been formally accepted. Back at Hellsing HQ, the boss takes a drag, swallowing her deep disgust at this televised freak show. Her Dark Hound's mocking message landed loud and clear, and now she's gotta hustle to fix this astronomical diplomatic nightmare. On the other side, the masterminds behind the trap celebrate the fact that the vampire swallowed the bait whole. Torching that useless strike team was the exact panic button this macabre fan club needed to kickstart the chaos. Far away at the Vatican, the uproar reaches the ears of Christ's very own bulldozer. The shattered peace treaty becomes a glorious, sacred excuse for the church to rain down holy hell in an absurdly divine crusade. In this sick climax, the twisted mastermind behind the plot finally lays his true fetishes bare. The endgame was always to use Alucard's murderous rampage and the ensuing global panic as a pretext to plunge the entire planet into a glorious nuclear wasteland. The Hotel Carnage isn't just a 5th-grade diplomatic fiasco, it's a bloody ballet. The architects of this mess are watching from the front row, basking in the apocalyptic chaos they've just unleashed. Their master plan becomes obvious in this bloodbath. To hell with taking territory or lining their pockets with cash. This faction's real turn-on is the pure essence of human suffering, a sick fetish for global war. In the middle of the slaughterhouse, the earlier massacre didn't even tickle the big vampire's hunger. Those little human toy soldiers were just a limp warm-up. Now he demands the cowardly bastard behind this trap finally show his face. Now the real final boss makes an appearance. An errand boy takes the wheel from the useless troops surrounding the place. Just his footsteps are enough to throw the rulebook out the window. The slick intro officially hits play on the brawl. The Mafia's errand boy drops the mask, proving to be the real nightmare of the night shift. This isn't a bar fight, it's a scheduled duel. The freak's psychopathy is off the charts. The earlier bloodbath was purely logistical, just to make the target empty his clips before the real fight. These idiots use the human meat shields like numbers on a spreadsheet. The bullshit small talk dies and the bizarre shootout tears through the scene without a warning. The assault swells into a monstrous attack. It's rubbed right in their faces that little lead shooters are useless against this kind of overpowered nonsense. Millennium's show-off announces that playtime is over. He decides to nail the coffin shut on this fight once and for all, triggering his overpowered magic trick to cage the vampire with no way out. The hit lands incredibly hard. The attack seems to have connected flawlessly, pinning the prey to the ground. The strike wipes out any sneaky little escape route or pathetic dodge roll. Taking this piercing blow doesn't faze the vampire. It acts like pure adrenaline. Instead of crying to the ref, the monster embraces the pain like hot sauce on a burger. He decrees that the slaughterfest is finally shifting into 5th gear. Pulling a handbrake turn on the script, the fight's focus shifts. Ignoring the boss for a second, the emissary plows through the pen of little human soldiers. The duel balloons into a hellish rampage worthy of the end of the world. The magical fireworks tear through the cop's flesh just like 12-gauge buckshot. The whole area turns into a blender. The barrage mercilessly punishes any human unlucky enough to still be standing there. And the ultimate secret can't be put back in the closet. With cameras getting shot up in the middle of the chaos, the game of hide and seek goes down the drain. The crappy mask separating the civilized world from the dark underworld is being ripped off in full HD. The bill for Arrogance has finally come due for the errand boy. His swagger evaporates instantly as the vampire's hellish counterattack pierces straight through his chest. The chump finds out the hard way that playing the tough guy doesn't grant an invincibility shield. The emissary realizes the monumental screw-up he's made. He decides to hit the reset button on his escape right now, begging for an inch of breathing room just so he doesn't get turned into Swiss cheese by the demon. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the backstabbing goes right to the hilt. Silencing the snitches kicks into 1st gear right then and there, right in the middle of the VIP military command room. The logistics room gets shot to pieces by Millennium's infiltrators. Paperwork, backup, and the Wi-Fi evaporate instantly. This dumb crew is trapped in a fishbowl of despair and death. Far away, sending good manners straight to hell, the hammer comes down. The Hellsing mercenaries' strategy now is to kick the damn door down. They're going to rub it in everyone's faces how a real rescue is done. With the red carpet paved with bullets, the escape route is clear. The Hellsing captain only cares about dragging the girl out and saving his own neck. His instinct screams that this Count Dracula doesn't need a babysitter or human help. Panning the camera back to the main ring, the power dynamic does a complete 180. The hotshot takes a punch to the gut that shatters the illusion. He realizes the hard way that his video game controller just broke. That's right when the puzzle pieces click together in the big vampire's head. The enemy's face proves that the losers from Millennium have crawled out of the grave. Except this revelation doesn't bring fear. It injects an uncontrollable, bloodthirsty thrill straight into the monster's veins. He mocks the kid as he watches his health pack successfully expire. The gash in his chest that won't close is a clear sign that the warranty is totally void. The vampire licks his lips, realizing these cheap little magic tricks are an absolute joke. The Dark Master finally digests the bureaucratic weight of this whole circus. Realizing that this scum survived means the entire Earth is about to take a bloodbath soon, and this psychopath embraces the end of the world with a sadistic smile. The beast's true fetish comes out to play to settle the score. It's not just about beating him to a pulp, it's about chewing up the poor bastard's sanity. The toll before the coffin is absolute mockery, forcing the prey to whimper and beg while the psychological terror does its job. The Hellsing family legacy demands knowing the enemy. That's why Arthur tests his little girl, wanting to see if she grasps the true threat lurking in the dark. Integra then delivers the answer that will define her cursed future. But textbook theory doesn't explain the bloody reality. Arthur rubs the great paradox in her face. If these freaks are limited by little magic rules, why the hell are they known as invincible killing machines? The answer lays the nightmare bare. Going toe-to-toe with these monsters is suicide because they know they're gods and act with sick sadism, loving to crush humans like worms. Years later, the lesson repeats itself in the present. A Millennium lackey tries to act like a badass, clinging to a false sense of control in the middle of the clash, but he has no idea of the massive power gap separating him from his enemies. His arrogance soon exacts its toll. Hellsing's tactical agents surround the fledgling vampire, cutting off any escape routes. What looked like an easy duel turns into a massive, coordinated slaughter. A second away from turning to ash, all that's left are tears. Shredded by a storm of lead, the fool spews hatred at the soldiers who just stamped his passport to hell. On another front, the vampire girl Seras realizes the danger is real. She falls back, spitting lead to try and hold off a new suited psycho, begging for a few seconds of survival. The universe, however, spits in her face. Her cannon jams at the worst possible moment. Without her heavy-duty crutch, she finds herself cornered, needing an absolute miracle to keep from turning to dust. The suited psycho struts around with the swagger of someone who's already won. He leads this sick game of cat and mouse, controlling the beatdown without giving a damn about a counterattack. But his victory is blatantly snatched away. The smoke clears, showing his plan flopped because Alucard, Hellsing's pet demon, decided to hijack the chaos. Alucard takes on the form of pure nightmare. He's not just there to protect his partner, but to spread terror and show that the power gap between them is a cosmic humiliation. The real boogeyman takes off his leash and unleashes his insanity. The message is clear. Cheap card tricks mean absolutely nothing against a furious ancient abomination. Cold sweat melts away the Lord's classy facade. Desperate, he burns through his energy in a wild, hysterical reflex just to try and fend off the predator and save his own skin. Refusing a humiliating defeat, the dandy makes a drastic choice. In a fit of heroic stupidity, he mutilates his own leg to strike back, praying to leave at least a scratch on the monster. The price for this audacity comes as a brutal counterattack, with Alucard rubbing his enemy's dignity on the asphalt. It's an utter humiliation designed to slice through the prey's ego before breaking the rest of his bones. The vampire's strike hits like a ton of bricks. The absurd weight of this impact highlights Alucard's absolute dominance over any poor bastard foolish enough to face him head-on. The aftermath of this little game is an absolute massacre. That cocky villain is reduced to a stinking sack of ground meat, opening the all-you-can-eat buffet for the worst execution imaginable. But a quick death would be a luxury he isn't getting. Alucard hacks into his brain and takes mental control of his crushed prey. Defeat is now a ruthless psychological invasion straight into the scumbag's soul. To uncover secrets, a monster doesn't ask polite questions, it drinks its target's mind. Alucard sinks his fangs in to swallow every memory, dirty secret, and strategy Millennium was trying to hide. The memories stolen from the fool's mind confirm the worst-case scenario. It becomes glaringly obvious that Millennium's plans run much deeper and darker than a simple, isolated terrorist attack. To the ultimate bloodsucker, this is all a hilarious joke. He bursts out laughing at the irony of Millennium's pawns thinking they're gods, when they're just cheap kindling for a massive bonfire. Watching the gruesome scene, reality smacks the rookie right in the face. Seras finally processes that her teammate is an untamable abomination that no mastermind could ever put on a leash. But the colossal uproar draws unwanted attention. A flood of flashing lights, reporters, and police cruisers threatens to blow Hellsing's secret shadow war wide open. The mercenaries go into survival mode and secure a getaway car. The aggressive goal now is to pile everyone into the back seat and safely transport the stolen secrets back back to base. Meanwhile, Alucard doesn't give a damn about the humans' panic, smirking as he deciphers his enemy's sick obsession. Millennium only wants total annihilation, and the vampire, seeing his own sadism reflected in them, gleefully braces himself for the incoming senseless bloodbath. The hunt for Millennium's Nazis isn't exclusive to the Hellsing organization. In the dark alleys of the Vatican, a geriatric bishop is cornered, forced to relive the trauma of running into the maniac who would become humanity's worst nightmare. The skeletons in the clergy's closet are starting to stink. The interrogation exposes all the hidden rot of the church. It becomes blatantly clear that the holy bureaucrats knew everything and pumped heavy funding into the bizarre fetishes of that little group of sadists during World War II. The blessed money only served to bankroll that scumbag leader's true fetish. He couldn't give a shit about his own country, using the divine funding strictly to feed his absurd lust for an endless bloody war. Any lame excuse about the Vatican being a victim is thrown out the window. The truth is that this cleric sold his own soul to the devil in a bizarre deal, all for the pathetic promise of gaining immortality as a fake vampire. With his world crashing down, the traitor falls into absolute despair. Panicking like a cornered rat, he cries and begs in a pathetic attempt to play the victim, foolishly dreaming of cheating his own death. But the 50-year tab of lies finally comes due. The human trash who corrupted everything while drooling over eternal life gets a game over in the most violent way possible, slaughtered by the very holy authorities he used as a shield. With the traitor dispatched, the maniacs of Section 13 show that their fanaticism is dialed up to 11. The execution is treated as a divine miracle, without a single ounce of remorse. The message is clear. The church washes away its own filth using gallons of fresh blood. The dust settles in Brazil after the chaos, with the foreign media scrambling to explain the freak show. They try to sugarcoat Hellsing's colossal bloodbath as just another routine terrorist attack. While mere mortals rack their brains over the carnage, the real psychopaths watch the whole disaster unfold right from the VIP seats. The masters of chaos grab their popcorn, reveling in the practical results of their handiwork. Millennium's boss grins from ear to ear at the spectacle. To this lunatic, seeing his own henchmen get crushed in Brazil isn't a failure, but a deliciously calculated tactical victory. With the insane test of strength complete, the pieces are finally in place. It's time to crawl out of the rat hole and greenlight the real global horror show. The macabre promise for the coming days is laid bare. The giant gates of hell on earth swing open, and anyone who even dares to breathe too loudly in the face of this invasion might as well start digging their own grave. Far away, Hellsing's brass absorbs the news of the massacre with ice-cold detachment, zero moralizing. The widespread slaughter was just a brutal maneuver executed exactly by the book. But the boss's patience completely evaporates under British political pressure. The morbid comedy routine gets cut short with a blunt order for the team to drag their asses back home, whatever it takes. The news of the circus burning down and the Vatican's imminent hunt fills the vampire lord with sheer bloodlust. The more factions joining the brawl, the more chaotic the ultimate meat grinder will be. Back at the makeshift base, the illusion of peace is trampled when the mercenaries realize they need a scenic getaway flight. The thought of cruising through the skies with their faces plastered all over wanted posters shocks the dynamic duo. Their brilliant solution to bypass the blockade is to toss the penal code out the window and go full-blown terrorist mode. If buying a legit ticket is off the table, the order is to simply hijack a jet out of sheer spite. Before they can even swallow that insane idea, a hostile visitor kicks down the hideout's door without knocking. Any time to plan evaporates, forcing them into survival mode in a matter of milliseconds before they all turn into mincemeat. The Vatican's lunatic priest packed his bags and tracked his target down to the millimeter. The game of cat and mouse is officially cancelled, making way for some straight-up, unapologetic carnage. In the midst of this hurricane of panic and invasion, the vampire's face lights up with sheer bloodlust. His unbearable boredom dies on the spot, replaced by the promise of a deliciously glorious fight to the death. The silent challenge immediately seals the deal between the two freaks. They glare at each other with pure, murderous excitement, thrilled that any chance of peaceful diplomacy has been gloriously flushed down the toilet. Catholic fanaticism takes the wheel of this madhouse in a merciless assault. His blind zeal to punish heretics steamrolls over any feudal defense, cutting the brakes for an epic blood-soaked charge. The retaliation hits back hard to assert absolute dominance in the brawl. The violently brutal counterattack attempts to crush the church's irritating audacity with pure, unadulterated brute force. However, the crazy priest proves he's built like a lead safe. The fanatic's body brutally tanks the blow, making the attempt to push him back even a single inch fail miserably. The circus completely spirals into a nasty, no-holds-barred street brawl. any martial arts technique is swapped out for an animalistic desperation to grind the opponent down before becoming literal ground beef on the floor. There's a bizarre cocktail of mockery and pure sadistic respect in his eyes. The vampire lord practically drools with joy watching a mere meatbag tank the hit beautifully and fight him head on. Out of nowhere, the blind fury comes to a screeching halt with a cold gesture. Someone simply hits the kill switch, completely breaking the frantic pacing of the beatdown and shifting the entire flow of the game. To mock him with class, the priest drops his combat stance and turns his back on the threat. This ultimate middle finger makes it crystal clear to everyone that the brawl ended purely because he said so. The message behind this elegant exit is crystal clear. It was just a tactical tease. This little gang fight acted purely as a boring teaser trailer for the massive global bloodbath that's going to erupt tomorrow. The farewell kicks the door on its way out with style, keeping the tension pushed to an unbearable limit. This bogus truce is held together by papier-mâché. One slip-up from either side and everything will collapse into a grotesque slaughterhouse with no room for whining. Millennium's geriatric high command finally loses patience with the Major. These uniformed bureaucrats hatch a desperate plan to put a leash on the Fat Man, seeing his tactics as a threat to their positions. But upon arriving at the base, the Major radiates a terrifying calm. He couldn't care less about the rules, perfectly aware of the amateur trap this military daycare has set for him. His presence makes it clear who really owns the battalion. The troops don't give a shit about the fatherland or these moldy generals acting like a fanatical cult ready to kill for their leader. When the old brass finally tries to corner him, the tables completely turn. With a sadistic grin, the strategist reveals he anticipated every single move these assholes made. Even so, the dinosaurs in suits try to act tough and bark orders. They demand blind submission, deluded by the idea that their ranks still mean a damn thing around here. Their display of authority is trashed with pure disgust. The Major spits on their dead oaths, shutting down any attempt at pulling rank by these useless geezers. And just like that, the easiest coup of the year is set in stone. The exact moment he calls the shots, the gray-haired board of directors becomes fertilizer for the next world war. Patience hits rock bottom, and violence takes over the room. The coup turns into a brutal physical beatdown, pummeling any remaining delusions of grandeur these suits still held. Completely stripped of their arrogance, the former bosses are reduced to a pile of crying garbage crawling on the filthy floor. The new inner circle watches this humiliation with chilling apathy. Spitting blood, one of the big shots speaks up, begging for the immortality he was denied. The imbecile realizes far too late that he never got the prize because the villains always saw him as disposable trash. A harsh reality check is shoved down the seniors' throats. They discover they were nothing but leeches funding the army and that this entire killing machine has always answered to just one man. For the elite clique, rubbing their former bosses' faces in the dirt and pumping them full of lead is a damn amusement park. This evil HR department hands out terminations with bullets and sick laughter. The sheer scale of the nightmare finally dawns on the dying suits. They die realizing they bankrolled an army of sharp-toothed monsters without ever understanding the contract they signed. With the trash taken out, the leader finally reveals his truly bizarre motivation. He doesn't want to rebuild empires or become president. This lunatic's plan is to plunge the planet into an endless bloodbath simply because he loves war. The past comes knocking to remind the vampire lord of the exact day of his downfall. This historic humiliation forces him to choke down the memory of taking a colossal beating and losing his untouchable status. This centuries-old shame won't wash off, and it's exactly what forged the collar the monster wears to this day. That defeat turned him into the submissive little weapon of his old enemies. But the jolt of the nightmare snaps him back to the real world, where a hellish international war has just broken out. It's time to swallow the tears of the past and focus on the absurd chaos knocking on his own front door. Meanwhile, England's chain-smoking boss waits seated in the command center. She knows government bureaucracy is useless and that the human squad gets easily trashed, making them completely reliant on her immortal lapdog. The sheer desperation of the situation forces historic rivals to swallow their pride and share a table. The fear of death turns Vatican fanatics and British hunters into best friends out of pure convenience. The funeral-like atmosphere shatters completely when Hellsing's ultimate weapon finally drops into the room. The boss tugs at his leash, reminding him who's in charge and demanding at least some basic manners in front of the suits. Giving zero shits about security protocol, the vampire lord walks right up to get face-to-face with the Queen of England. It's a bizarre encounter between an ageless, built monster and the little old lady, a random reunion that hasn't happened in decades. Shocking everyone, He doesn't mock her age, instead recognizing the same feisty and stubborn soul as always, proud to still be sharp in her old age. The queen takes the wheel and orders him to spill the secret intel already. The Dark Lord takes the mic and drops a bombshell. The enemy isn't some new cult, but ghosts from a war everyone swore was buried. They survived by selling their own souls to build a freakish army. The boss connects the dots and nearly has a heart attack realizing that bad weeds never die. It's the damn Millennium project from World War II, which they swore they had burned to ashes half a century ago. There's no time to even process the disaster before the madhouse's heavy security is breached by a sudden invasion. The jump scare forces the mercenaries to draw their guns on a ghost that just popped out of nowhere. According to the laws of physics, no one should be able to get in there, nearly giving the old security chief a stroke, but the invading kid just smirks cynically while surrounded by assault rifles, playing the peaceful messenger pigeon card. The reason behind the suicide invasion quickly becomes clear. The brat is basically a WhatsApp from hell. He's just there as a macabre human tripod to force the leaders to listen to the real villain yelling over the radio. Except the villain's triumphant on-screen entrance trips over a metaphorical internet cable. A bizarre glitch completely ruins the dramatic tension, turning the threat of the century into a humiliating tech support joke. On the other side of the screen, the boss's tantrum turns into a ruthless bloodbath. To reassert dominance after such a massive fail, he smashes the face of his own IT crew, proving he's a complete sick sadist. Bathed in his minions' blood, the video call finally connects for real. The dead man the world swore it had deleted 50 years ago rises from the grave to humiliate the highest authorities on the entire planet. The two overpowered monsters finally face off through the screen, and that stale 50-year-old grudge boils over. The weight of this historic rivalry sets the whole place on fire and completely ignites the vampire's killer instinct. Cutting off the two monsters' ego trip, the human boss takes the wheel back. She pulls rank and tries to squeeze some answers and logical motives out of the cult before they all end up in body bags. But rationality hits a brick wall of absolute mockery, revealing the true face of the nightmare. It becomes blatantly clear that the enemy doesn't care about territory. They're just a horde of psychopaths with an uncontrollable hard-on for blowing up the planet just for the hell of it. The enemy lackey laughs at the pointless idea of having a logical reason for war. He throws it in their faces that human sanity is nowhere near the last battalion's bizarre plans. The objective here is pure, unadulterated chaos. On the other side, the old English geezers nearly have a heart attack in their chairs. The idea of facing a world war fought just for shits and giggles breaks the minds of these suits. They're used to settling everything over a spot of afternoon tea, not through savagery. But Millennium's top dog spits in the faces of these politicians. To him, they're all just useless cowards. The real message of pure, genuine hatred is addressed entirely to one single person, Sir Integra. To show off his power, he displays his freakish legion. It's a colossal army of immortal zealots driven by the same disgusting ideology. They're all foaming at the mouth to flood the whole of Europe with that warm, red liquid. And to prove he's completely lost his mind, he turns the meat grinder on his own allies. The pawns are chewed up right in front of everyone. It rubs it in their faces that absolutely no useless soul escapes this clinical insanity. Watching this bizarre little freak show on the screen, the old geezers in London lose their very last drop of sanity. Their idiotic dream of resolving things with a signed peace treaty is completely ripped to shreds. The brutal carnage leaves no doubt about the terror that's coming their way. But out of nowhere, the villain's swagger gets knocked down a peg. A little noise coming from London interrupts the broadcast and catches even the crazies by surprise. Hellsing gives notice that they aren't going to take this cheap power trip lying down. Their master plan, after years of hiding in the shadows, is finally laid out on the table. There's no cartoon villain world domination here. This crew's insane fetish is purely to steamroll and crush the entirety of England. Sir Integra sees right through the little act in the blink of an eye, with zero intention of signing a peace treaty. The boss lady welcomes the dirty fight and presses the fuck it button. She decides to answer the chaos with 100 times more brute force. The network cable is brutally yanked from the socket, wiping the messenger off the map. The message sent is crystal clear. From today on, the only chatter between them will be written by pumping lead into the enemy's neck. Hellsing's mind game is to rob the villains of the military climax they wanted so badly. The warning hits bluntly and strips all the honor out of the whole thing. There will be no epic background music, just the pure and simple job of squashing disgusting cockroaches. Back at headquarters, the Dirty Pact tightens the knot. The badass boss and her immortal pet monster get on the exact same sadistic page. They are completely ready to welcome that bloody hurricane knocking at their door. All restraint goes out the window, and the head of Hellsing spits out the ultimate order to her troops. No more sweet talk or pointless mercy. The final recipe is to take the leash off the beast for an all-you-can-eat buffet, wiping the entire Millennium crew out of existence. The Vatican's little gossip club is crumbling fast. Their informants are being hunted down mercilessly, leaving the church completely in the dark for the war that's coming. When the penny drops, Maxwell figures out the enemy's plan. Millennium doesn't give a rat's ass about the Vatican. The only excuse for this whole mess is to crush Hellsing and obliterate Alucard. But the church isn't just going to sit back and watch. Behind the scenes, the Vatican is gathering its troop of heavily armed zealots to invade England in a glorified crusade. For this madness to actually work, Father Anderson answers the call and plays along. He's going to become the brutal, piercing spear of the church's fury. Except Millennium's grunts try to set a trap. The suckers spray lead everywhere in an alleyway, desperately trying to keep the priest from even breathing. But all hell breaks loose with zero restraint. Anderson turns the alleyway into a cheap slaughterhouse, dedicating this soup of guts on the asphalt as a macabre prayer to God. Meanwhile, Millennium's top brass wait quietly in the shadows. To them, this world war is just a chessboard they've spent decades drooling to play on. The chessmaster speaks up with a sneer. He makes a point to spit out that this isn't some cheap revenge. It's just him hitting start on a game that's been paused for 50 years. The guy's megalomania is off the charts. His real hard-on isn't conquering countries. It's dragging the whole planet into his blood-soaked cabaret purely to spread chaos. This psycho life coach energy infects all the suits in the room. The thought of the planet turning into a giant puddle of tomato juice brings a collective euphoria to the elite squad. The boss reveals that the ground conflicts were just a smokescreen, a cheap bait planned purely to keep the enemies looking at the wrong side of the map. With the fools distracted, their trap card was already loaded. A pure aerial strike, giving zero shits about any useless security barriers on the ground. The control room of the true target turns into a kicked anthill. Some freaky thing tears through the sky straight toward their little boat, leaving the top brass shitting their pants trying to understand this absurd kamikaze attack. Millennium's Nazi troop begins their silent, deadly blitz across the sea. Harboring decades of ridiculous grudges, they advance in the dead of night like an emo shark. For the lunatic leading this invasion, starting a world war is just a bloody talent show. She personally conducts this bizarre opera, singing victory long before the first bullet even flies. The VIP target of the attack is the gigantic ship representing the crown jewel of the British Royal Navy. Hijacking this fortress is a massive slap in the face to England. Inside the control room, a mole drops their disguise and the commander is eliminated in the blink of an eye. With the sabotage complete, the vessel's defensive barrier simply crumbles from the inside out. The slaughterhouse opens its doors, giving no one a chance to breathe. Elite soldiers freeze in panic as they realize they're facing freaks who treat the Navy like sliced meat. The cherry on this sadistic cake is the losers respawn. The fallen sailors are resurrected as mindless zombies and cannon fodder, turning the ship into an absolute meat grinder. With the ship under control, the unhinged new captain kicks back and waits for the trap to spring. The real plan is to keep England's deadliest weapons stranded at sea while the true apocalypse devours the capital back on the mainland. Meanwhile, back on the mainland, a rookie's vampire stomach rejects any regular human food. Trying to chew a normal snack has turned into an absurd torture session in the bathroom, but the stubborn rookie keeps forcing a normal girl cosplay to keep from losing her mind. Clinging to the stupid routines of her past is the only psychological crutch keeping her from giving in to the hunger and snapping. The head of the organization crashes the scene, laying down the law without an ounce of pity. She makes it crystal clear that there's no room for a needy soldier whining about their identity while the world goes up in flames. The pressure hits its peak when the red juice is bluntly served on the table. It's a bizarre medical dose meant to keep the girl from kicking the bucket, forcing her to throw her old human dignity straight in the trash. Things get absurd and completely sadistic when the boss cuts her own finger, offering her blood as a snack. She knows exactly what kind of brutal instinct this will trigger in the vampire in denial. The bizarre pact is finally sealed. The vampire girl drinks the vital liquid, marking a satanic baptism of no return and officially tossing her old, fearful self into the trash. With her existential crisis dead and her mind razor-sharp, the fear simply vanishes. The young vampire goes full guard dog mode, completely ready to follow her boss and deal with the bloodbath at sea. Millennium's sadistic crew hijacks the stolen British aircraft carrier like it's a damn Uber. They pierce through enemy defenses with absurd arrogance, turning this metal bathtub into an aquatic fortress. Rip Van Winkle, the sick mastermind playing the invader, is literally wet with ecstasy. For this psycho, shredding the English forces is just a ridiculous opera where she gets to sing as the lead diva. She loves rubbing humiliation right in the crooked faces of the rookies. Rip casually drops the ridiculous price the captain paid, selling out his own country for some Wish.com immortality. But Millennium's welcome toast is stuffed with pure malice. Rip drops the grand prize for spitting on their own flag, utterly crushing the childish dreams of these delusional recruits. The answer is basically a death certificate with a promotional sticker. Rip spews out that the little gift for hijacking the ship is, in reality, the luxurious right to earn a coffin. Without blinking, the bill for treason comes due. Millennium's absurd power is unleashed all at once, creating a bizarre magical barrage that no one can outrun in such a tight little hallway. With the bloodbath cleanup done, Rip Van Winkle becomes the absolute owner of the ship. She wiped out the trash, and now the little stage is shining for the brawl that actually matters. And the sellout captain's tab is cashed in on the spot. The banhammer for treason comes flying without mercy, and his little illusion of power goes down the drain along with his last pathetic breath of life. Death doesn't come for the rest with simple gunshots. The attack flies like a rabid pit bull playing tag with its dinner, rubbing it in the victim's dumb face that trying to run is a certificate of stupidity. With the old geezers dead, the deed to the property changes hands. The slaughter isn't a bump in the road, it's just the blood-stamped receipt confirming the theft of the aircraft carrier. The time tunnel vomits problems into the present. The high-tech little boat instantly becomes a crash pad for a troop of maniacs that everyone swore got cancelled in the last century, parading around with their egos in the clouds. The evil suits celebrate like it's a game-winning goal. The brass watches, giving a standing ovation, knowing they've set up the perfect launchpad circus for the dark madness they've planned. Just to secure the new owner's verification badge, they paint the rival's shame right onto the ship's metal. It's hardcore psychological bullying tattooed right there to scream that the circus from hell is back in business. But this whole bloodbath has the mad boss's fingerprints all over it. The major casually admits he doesn't give a shit about patriotism. What gets him off is the pure juice of the massacre and watching the world burn to a crisp. The fetish for dominating shit-scared losers is what drives these mules. Crushing the victim's last shred of faith under their boots has become the equivalent of hitting the cosmic jackpot for these guys. This isn't about settling old petty squabbles. The Major's goal is to force an insane, hellish script, shitting on human common sense and dragging all of humanity face first into the worst apocalypse in history. And then the madman drops the mic. The big daddy of chaos pokes at the troops' lapdog behavior, demanding to know if every lackey there is blindly eager to blow everything up and kiss the dirt smiling. The collective meltdown is signed off. The herd of troops dives into a homicidal frenzy, eating death for breakfast and turning into a megazord of pure disaster built on a bloodbath. The tractor of chaos finally shifts into fifth gear. This bizarre troop kicks down the closet door and jumps into the attack, dying to unleash their psycho mob for the world to see. The mental diarrhea takes over the clouds, rubbing the sheer size of the shitstorm right in our faces. The target is locked dead on London's snout, and the hellish convoy flies like a thirsty missile straight for the capital. The chubby ringmaster orders the completion of the assault that flopped humiliatingly in the last century, a historic payback pulled from the ashes, bankrolled entirely by a ridiculous hard-on for blowing things up. Far from there, the boss lady smells the rot in the air. Her OP instincts catch the enemy's cheap shot, and the rush now is just to put her troops on display, armed to the teeth for the brawl. And the company's gothic Joker is already inhaling the carnage in the breeze. The promise of an apocalypse-level slugfest doesn't make him sweat, it just triggers a violent craving for the bizarre event he's been drooling to play. The bets in the death bingo are in. The chaotic shootout this militia begged for is about to crash headfirst into the most sickening nightmare humanity has hiding in its closet. To tank this all-out war, extreme measures are in full swing. Alucard tops off his energy reserves to the max right before the inevitable carnage that's coming. The bloodsucker's psycho radar snips out the danger way before any useless alarm. This crazy bastard knows exactly the colossal scale of the approaching bloodbath. Drowning in an acid trip of a dream, the soul of his very own weapon comes to life. The entity turns into a ridiculous, annoying parasite, living rent-free in this fool's mind. But an immortal's head is a chaotic dumpster fire. The parasite insists on staying, trying to grab the wheel and completely take over his subconscious. The internal meltdown reaches a peak of total chaos. That's exactly when some hysterical screams from the real world start tearing through the barrier of his trance. The freakout works perfectly. The Resistance's top dog is violently dragged by the hair back to this pathetic reality. Enough with the beauty sleep and mind trips. The fucking final war has begun, and this psycho is totally ready to make it rain blood. The doomsday clock finally hits play. The evil crew sets the gears of chaos in motion, gearing up for an imminent bloodbath. The ace up the sleeve to crush the British is already in position. Ignoring the utter chaos of the moment, the gang's top assassin, Rip Van Winkle, simply decides to enjoy the breeze. But the calm conceals an ultimate sacrifice. A filthy pact has turned every sailor there into an incurable monster, driven by the single, ridiculous goal of spreading absolute terror. Across the ocean, the upper echelons of the British army suffer a mental collapse. Pure dread takes shape as these suits realize a full-blown invasion is now a certainty. To clean up the mess, Integra slams the brakes on the crisis. The head of the Hellsing organization drags her squad straight to Central Command, making it crystal clear that this apocalypse won't be stopped by regular soldiers. She doesn't ask for permission, taking full control as the only authority capable of slicing up demons. The humiliation burns the generals' egos, proving that against witchcraft, the little stars on their uniforms are worthless. The atmosphere in the room turns into a genuinely tense wake. While the paperwork is sorted out, Hellsing's secret weapon and living statue radiates a silent terror in the background, ensuring the top brass doesn't rebel against their new boss. Any doubt about who caused the attack sinks under a tragic answer. The calling card left in the wreckage mercilessly proves that the Nazi vampires from the worst war of the century have risen hungry from their graves. Without sugarcoating it, Integra tears the truth wide open and announces the triumphant return of the German scum. This bursts the delusional bubble of the generals in denial, forcing them to swallow the shocking reality that they are dealing with real monsters. The target of the attack is the most expensive toy in the British fleet. A giant military ship has become a massive, useless drowned coffin, overrun by creatures laughing in the darkness of the heavy tide. Even with the warning, the generals embrace pure stupidity as they monitor the lone ship. Their egos speak louder, and they buy into the idea of taking out the trash using standard military protocol, ignoring the monstrous threat. The countdown for the meat grinder begins. The helicopters pierce the ocean's rotten fog, flying blind straight into the sadistic jaws of a guaranteed death. The little party begins, but the brilliant tactic sinks in the very first second. The squad realizes they've already become dinner before their useless boots even touch the ship's deck. The harsh blow of reality hurts badly. The crew realizes that the laws of science and military tactics have flown out the window, and Integra's bizarre warning has come to collect its debt in blood. The bloodbath turns super humiliating real quick. Their fancy special forces diplomas and neat little helmets don't shield anyone against Millennium's dark magic. For the villains, this has basically turned into a sick video game. The massacre is cheered on as one massive, twisted troll job against the arrogance and overconfidence of the British elite troops. In the middle of the carnage, the one running the show steps up laughing her ass off. Rip Van Winkle single-handedly trashes the army's ego, rubbing it in their faces that modern pea shooters are absolutely useless here. For this psycho, the bloodbath has become a fancy ballroom dance. She commands the flying guts like a sadistic maestro, conducting a perfect mess of pure psychopathic fun. Far from there, Integra completely loses her patience with the generals whining. She spits the harsh reality right in the old men's faces, mercilessly rubbing in how much their rotten, stupid egos cost in blood. Swallowing this absurd level of threat becomes the final funeral march for the room, and it is exactly this mountain of misery that lights up Alucard's smile, knowing that military strategy has failed and his time to shine on stage has finally arrived. Rip Van Winkle is soaking up every drop of this mid-ocean bloodbath. Wiping out the British elite and hijacking the aircraft carrier was her own private little show to stroke the Nazi ego. Millennium's victory this round seems absurdly complete. Meanwhile, back at the Allied base, things take a serious turn for the worse. Hellsing and the military realize that playing soldier has failed miserably against this threat. Despair is already knocking on everyone's door. Out of patience with the suits, Integra tosses diplomacy in the trash. She slams the true weight of her authority on the table and ruthlessly shuts up the useless council. The days of trying to reason with spineless bureaucrats end right here. She extracts absolute clearance from military command to handle the crisis. Integra now has carte blanche to ignore any petty rules of engagement and use whatever it takes to exterminate the threat. The organization's ultimate trump card waits silently in the corner of the room, just standing by for orders. The vampire's presence makes it clear that he's the only acceptable answer to crush this enemy ultimatum. The problem is, the enemy aircraft carrier has become a meticulously calculated kill zone. The Nazis have set up an absolute magical defense, turning any attack attempt into a twisted game of chess. But Integra's relentless mind simply flips the board. She realizes this isolated super barrier is also a perfect cage for the suckers trapped inside. If she can just breach the blockade, they'll have nowhere to run. With time breathing down their necks, the infiltration needs to be completely insane. Sending little boats or conventional aircraft is a joke. They need a method so fast the enemy can't even process it. That's when Integra's pet monster points out the solution on the map. He lets them know he's found a way to bypass the defenses, using an absolutely unhinged vehicle to deliver death right to their front door. Before the mission even kicks off, the regular military commits a massive tactical blunder. A fleet of elite fighter jets decides to launch a rogue attack, flying blind straight into the lion's den. The squadron comes in hot, unleashing the very best of their arsenal on the ship. The pilots rain down missiles with the blind certainty that a coordinated strike like this will vaporize any resistance. But the real horror show rears its head, to their absolute despair. The ship's supernatural defense awakens like a starving beast, blocking the attack effortlessly and turning the tables on the fighter jets. The gruesome slaughter begins mid-air. The anomaly wipes them out, ripping the planes in half and proving in the bloodiest way possible that going head-to-head using standard rules was pure suicide. Suddenly, down on the armored ship, the Nazi celebration completely dies out. An overwhelming presence hits the arrogant sniper, replacing all her badass posturing with the sheer terror of someone who just crapped her pants. Reality hits like a ton of bricks, and panic grips the vampire as she realizes exactly which boogeyman is coming. She realizes her safe little sandcastle has become a cage, because Hellsing's watchdog is finally off his leash. The sheer insanity of the plan is fully exposed in the sky. Instead of standard military tactics, Alucard is using a supersonic jet as a glorified kamikaze missile. It's a suicide dive, tearing right through the defenses, betting everything on the simple fact that he's completely immortal. To bypass the enemy, Hellsing embraces pure insanity. These sick bastards unearth a bizarre Cold War spy plane to use as a suicide missile. The hypersonic suppository tears through the sky without mercy. Integra's unhinged counterattack takes flight, aiming straight for the heart of the hijacked ship. On the aircraft carrier, the Nazis literally crap their pants. They realize that's no bomb dropping, but a FedEx from hell making an express delivery. The jet goes into a steep, aggressive dive, carrying a giant sadistic mockery painted right on the fuselage. Hellsing decided to rub the enemy's pathetic nature in their faces before crushing them. Inside, to the OG vampire, the absolute chaos is irrelevant. While the enemy base pisses itself in fear, he awaits the crash smiling like a fat kid at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Despair takes charge of the ship. The grunts empty their mags, shooting blindly into the dark, trying to wipe out a demon who couldn't care less about basic physics. With the weak gunfire failing, the lunatic enters a state of denial. Rip Van Winkle lies to herself, pretending she's still the alpha predator just so she doesn't lose her mind completely. Scared shitless, she goes all out with her last trump card. It's no tactical genius, just animalistic hysteria, firing a magic bullet to try and keep the boogeyman at bay. The absurd shot hits mid-air, smashing the little plane to smithereens in a brutal, beautiful display of destruction. The sick ride is blown to pieces while still high in the sky. The grunts all cheer, thinking they've hit the jackpot. This pathetic delusion of victory makes the useless bastards drop their guard at the absolute worst possible time. But they soon realize the flying scrap metal was just a battering ram. The mangled hull only acted as a human can opener to unleash what was tucked away inside. The premium slaughterhouse is wide open for business. Fully unleashed, the real Satan oozes across the deck, turning the ship into a stinking, inescapable cage. The villain finally snaps, and her aura of superiority melts away. The harsh reality that she's about to become past tense crushes her mind, completely wiping away her forced badass facade. To the uniformed demon, this is absolute cinema. He drinks their tears of panic like a fine wine, making it crystal clear that his ultimate thrill is living rent-free in his victim's head before making the kill. Amidst the scrap metal, the boogeyman stands tall, the very embodiment of human mockery. It's a surgical warning to the universe that the true nightmare has arrived, and he runs this show now. Rip Van Winkle completely loses her mind. Her ruthless huntress facade crumbles the second the idiot realizes there is no escape. The harsh reality sets in. She has become the hunted. The siege finally tightens around the ship. This overwhelming power swallows what little space is left, suffocating any useless survival instinct and isolating this pathetic prey once and for all. She tries to clutch her military badge, begging for a spark of courage, but her brain just fries, proving that no basic shooting course prepares an idiot for becoming mincemeat. Far from this mess, Millennium's high command watches the disaster with popcorn in hand. They analyze the lieutenant's freakout with zero empathy, treating her coffin as a mere statistic. But the enemy boss's reaction throws logic out the window. Instead of whining, the fat man flashes a bizarre smile because this bloody sacrifice fits perfectly into his master plan. Back on the deck, Rip's brain finally turns to mush. She realizes her life was a rehearsed joke, and the final act is exactly like that tragic opera she loves. The devil always comes to collect. Her pitiful state doesn't go unnoticed by the extras. The foot soldiers realize their untouchable boss is turning into paste, and the widespread panic throws the leadership manuals in the trash. In an absurdly suicidal attempt, the clowns waste all their ammo on Dracula. It's cute human hope trying to tickle a god of death with pieces of lead. Even while getting turned into Swiss cheese, the sick cult's brainwashing speaks louder. These imbeciles still embrace the faith that kicking the bucket serves some noble purpose for the fat boss's delusions. But the big vampire deals with the useless resistance by shutting down the playground. He unleashes all his internal chaos to serve dessert, turning what was a fight into a full-blown slaughterhouse. The black goo starts swallowing the lackeys one by one like snacks. The pitch-black darkness itself locks the exits, turning this game of survival tag into a colossal and deadly mousetrap. The monster's absurd aggression chews through the entire line of defense. The warning is spat out in blood. This armed wall was just a paper-thin security blanket to calm down a scared child. The blood feast then gets its main course. Alucard finally unbuckles his mental chastity belt, throwing the front door wide open for raw, naked carnage. Combat ceases to exist, turning into a gourmet slaughterhouse. The extras die by the truckload, proving that an elite military diploma is worthless in the face of the impossible. A millisecond before becoming dead meat, the penny finally drops for the field bosses. The idiots realize they poked death with a toothpick, but it's already too late. The success of this bloody cleanup locks the true prey in the slaughterhouse in complete isolation. With no backup and nowhere to run, the entire ship turns into a wonderful prison for Rip. The monopoly over the arena is now absolute. The red carpet has been perfectly sterilized of suckers, ensuring zero interference when it's time to finish the main job with style. Without her little meat shields, the anvil of reality crushes the lieutenant. The trauma of being tossed aside by the organization, mixed with the certainty of her own demise, melts the remainder of her mind into pure acceptance. With the army annihilated, the pathetic prey is left completely raw and exposed. Alucard takes slow steps to collect the toll for this stupid invasion, knowing that the private screening of this brutal execution is finally about to roll. Battlefield communications go down the drain on a catastrophic scale. For the British command, the operation has turned into a ridiculous blackout, and they've become nothing but pathetic spectators to the absurd carnage taking place. But for the Hellsing leadership, this radio silence is music to their ears. It's the sweet confirmation that their big bad hound has finally been let off his leash, proving their unquestionable dominance over the chaos. Meanwhile, the huntress who played the untouchable predator swallows a brutal reality check. Her facade crumbles like a house of cards, leaving behind nothing but a useless wreck shaking in her boots in the face of real danger. At that moment, the last drop of hope is violently trampled. Her single thread of contact with the outside world is gone for good, a clear sign that there's no rescue coming and she is 100% screwed. Then the panic of having her personal space invaded kicks the door down. The absolute worst-case scenario she tried so hard to escape has just stepped onto the welcome mat, and it finally sinks in that the hide-and-seek timer has hit 0. The big bad vampire pulls off a mental checkmate, throwing the ball in her court with a bizarre ultimatum. Forcing her to choose between crying like a worthless coward or trying to play hero becomes his sadistic bonus of psychological torture. The freak finally drops the mask and shows who runs the show. Forget the military tactics bullshit. She's now face to face with a colossal monster who laughs in the face of any human. In a final desperate tantrum, the lieutenant ditches submission and tries her luck throwing hands. It's a hilariously useless move, but one that perfectly fuels this maniac's sadistic thrill. Trembling in panic, she unloads a frantic barrage on him. Every useless shot from her weapon is an invisible cry for a rescue that absolutely no one is going to show up to provide. Except this bastard bat finds the rules of biology to be an absolute joke. He tanks her little freak out with ease, rubbing her face in the overpowered immortal cheat code she just tried to step up to. The terror scrapes the bottom of the barrel when the illusion of a surprise attack is shattered for good. The tank has run entirely dry. It's the definitive game over for the boss lady's armory, with zero chance of coming back. The badass sniper who attacked from afar has shrunk down to a frightened puppy in an alley. Her tears delete her arrogant superiority, while the absurd final boss casually walks up, beautifully blocking the girl's only way out. That nasty smack simply wipes the floor with the poor girl's dignity. It's raw, unfiltered humiliation, legally certifying that the steering wheel of her life is now this psycho's plaything. To masterfully seal the humiliation package, the psycho snatches the very object that defined her ego. Her beloved little gun changes owners, laughing right in the face of everything she thought it represented. And the execution arrives with the subtlety of a runaway truck. The strike comes down tearing through her body, not like a fair fight, but like the cold slaughter of a butcher closing the register on the hunt. But the joke crosses the line, because dying was just the tutorial. The beast sucks the girl's essence through a straw, locking the poor thing forever in the VIP basement of his personal hell. On the ground lies nothing but the crumpled packaging. Her ego, memories, and sheer stupidity have become a full-course meal, leaving behind only the ridiculous void of a fool who got Alt plus F4D straight out of life's database. While this little show wraps up, the villain's heavy artillery keeps raining down hard outside. Losing this useless pawn doesn't even scratch the master plan, serving as a warning that the real global chaos is just warming up. Our vampire's victory is in the bag, but the massacre has only just begun. He moves in without an ounce of mercy to collect the toll from this idiotic sniper who thought she could go toe-to-toe with the boss. The macabre download begins. The sniper's soul is sucked in like a turbo vacuum, deleting her entire personality to merge her with the monster's army of undead slaves. The girl's brain simply melts. Her sanity goes down the drain as she realizes her very existence is being ripped apart and completely swallowed by this black hole of darkness. For our bloodsucker, devouring this soul is the ultimate trophy. He savors the moment like a true macabre feast, celebrating just how overpowered and immortal he truly is. With her essence devoured, the leftover body isn't worth a dime. Her physical shell is reduced to literal trash, tossed on the ground like an empty snack wrapper. But then the camera cuts, and the madness sets in. Instead of mourning the dead, the Nazi brass looks at this gruesome bloodbath and simply applauds, calling the massacre an absolute success. The chubby major knows exactly what this slaughter means. Zero panic on his face, just a sadistic smile confirming that his master plan is unfolding perfectly. But there's always a crybaby in the bunch. A trembling officer tries to play the voice of reason over the recent casualties, questioning his psychopathic boss's madness. The battalion's insanity reaches its peak. Death doesn't scare them. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The bunch of fanatical idiots celebrate in excitement, ready to sprint headfirst into hell. Back at sea, our vampire embraces his boogeyman persona, laughing at the suckers who tried to step up to him. The big guy chuckles, thinking he won, and that the bloody slaughterhouse is officially open for business. But while the monster celebrates all alone out at sea, the major is laughing right back at him. The sadistic fat man used all those casualties just to sideline the enemy's pit bull, stranding him far away from home. The troop's sacrifice bought the perfect amount of time. Without the big vampire around to protect London, the front door has been left wide open. The entire city is now in the invading army's crosshairs, completely oblivious to the incoming apocalypse. The table is set for the end of the world. Checkmate has been declared, triggering the absolute crushing of an entire empire in a sea of fire and rubble. It's going to be the most cursed, chaotic night any poor sucker has ever seen. After 50 years rotting in the dark, the Millennium fleet finally rears its head. The collective frenzy among these grunts is absolute. They know the time to wreak havoc and start the massacre has finally arrived. The grand prize of this operation is a completely exposed capital. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet of fresh meat served on a silver platter. All of this is going down right when the only guy capable of going toe-to-toe with them is taking a vacation far away. The Major savors this tactical advantage like a hardcore nerd opening a rare booster pack. He makes good on the promise he made to his battalion of freaks. The stage of their greatest past humiliation is now set for a bloody rematch. But the fleet's goal was never to stage a standard military occupation. The High Command simply throws the army manual in the trash. The direct order is to turn this entire city into the biggest open-air slaughterhouse on the planet. The British suits freak out when they they realize the whole country just suffered a total blackout out of nowhere. It's a meticulously orchestrated communications cut. The goal is to make sure no one can call for backup or strike back. That is, until the radio screams the true scale of the disaster unfolding. This isn't some petty skirmish between nations using normal soldiers. The enemy troops spit on biological logic and make the government's little guns look like children's toys. In the midst of this collective freakout at command, Integra is the only boss keeping her composure in the face of the apocalypse. The day this madwoman has waited her whole life to face has finally come to collect. But the peace is short-lived, and Integra becomes a hostage to the very fools she swore to protect. Surrounded by backstabbers and without her pet vampire around, the boss of Hellsing is dealt a checkmate right off the bat. The tension in the room gets incredibly heavy. The real motive behind this mutiny becomes clear to the squad. The group doesn't just want to take the military base by storm. The actual goal is to box up the head of Hellsing alive to mount on the wall of the Millennium top brass like a hunting trophy. The boss's immortal butler steps onto the scene and answers the call with pleasure. His mild-mannered tea-serving grandpa facade vanishes instantly. He turns into a true professional butcher who has hosted this slaughter a zillion times before. The idiot's infinite health cheat breaks in a matter of seconds. They are sliced and diced like deli meat at the market. It just goes to show that fake powers can't tank someone with a master's degree in assassination. With the trash taken out and the boss safe and sound, the group's attention turns to the bigger issue. The traitor in the room caught some lead and is now history. The problem is that the violent bloodbath going down outside is just in its warm-up phase. The real plague of the invasion arrives by kicking down the door to the entire country. The radio silence wasn't just a scare tactic, it was their red carpet. The main army of bloodsuckers breached the defenses without even setting off a fire alarm. The enemy air command pushes forward, driven by a single, sick objective to destroy everything in their path. They couldn't care less about their own safety, focusing solely on maxing out their kill count. It's simply an aerial march of lethal chaos. The Dark Legend finally devours the whole country in one fell swoop. What used to be just crazy barracks talk is now bringing the boot down mercilessly on the chest of every target below. The point of no return was just run over at 100 miles an hour. 50 years crammed in the dark finally unleashes an uncontrollable euphoria of bloodlust in these creatures. To them, the crowded capital isn't some boring military conquest. It's a gigantic all-you-can-eat buffet, served right on a silver platter. The sick blockade of this attack throws any thought of escape straight in the trash. The entire invasion was meticulously designed to be a fatal bear hug. The fancy capital has been turned into a literal human slaughterhouse, locked from the outside. But to top off the disaster, a divine squad was already lying in wait in the city to cash in on the chaos. For them, this macabre invasion just became the dream stage to play Crusade. Hell throws its doors wide open as the Vatican wipes out everyone in the name of God. London seems peaceful and boring at night. Civilians walk around pretending to have important lives, completely oblivious to the danger. But this tranquility is a blatant lie. Suddenly, a colossal shadow tears through the sky and swallows the city's light. It is a dark curtain masking the absolute terror that is about to descend upon the capital. The reality finally hits the people on the streets. Their brains try to process the impossible as the security of one of the most untouchable cities in the world turns to dust. The impossible reveals itself in the sky. A colossal fleet of military relics from a rotten past invades the air, making modern security look like a joke. The nightmare makes a point of signing the massacre. The Millennium organization emerges to rub its mark in the world's face, resurrecting humanity's most wretched trauma. Far from the chaos outside, the operation's sick mastermind savors his trophy. Decades of planning exiled in the dark finally reach the most chaotic climax possible. His troops are not a regular army, but a blind cult bathed in hatred. This fanatical horde waits, salivating for the boss's signal to chew up the city without mercy. With a purely sadistic gesture, the Major gives the order. The stage of doom opens, officially authorizing the most brutal massacre of the century. The army reacts in a brutal frenzy. Their morale explodes, revealing a lunatic cult thirsty for carnage, firing up a machine ready to slice through enemies with bloodlust. Before the attack focuses solely on the streets, the commander points out the mission's main target. Their greatest nightmare already has a set address and is marked for death. Even with the enemy monster isolated in the ocean, the boss cuts down his henchmen's arrogance. Snubbing the base they left behind is asking for the plan to fail. The human leader of the enemy base and her new vampire apprentice are treated as a lethal threat. To Millennium, they are pure terror waiting with surgical precision. With the strategy set, military morality is thrown in the trash. London's defenseless population ceases to be collateral damage and becomes a chaotic feast served on a silver platter. The six steamroller shifts into first gear. Massive lead tears through the night, rubbing it in everyone's faces that the city's defenses were pure illusion. The false peace crumbles completely. The first shot kisses the city, injecting the Major's hatred straight into its veins and guaranteeing that no one will be left alive. The choice of arsenal is pure sadistic mockery. Millennium rubs World War II relics in England's face, forcing the nation to relive old traumas before the end. The country's favorite landmark instantly collapses. Crushing these cultural monuments is the definitive sign that the Empire has taken a fatal blow. The concrete turns into a bizarrely disgusting meat grinder. Fleeing civilians are swallowed by flames and explosions. Feeling the crushing weight of the Nazi fury, people lose their minds and the streets sink into hysteria. The wealthy capital loses its composure and turns into a gigantic mass grave heading for slaughter. The carnage shifts into fifth gear with an uninterrupted barrage of missiles. The brutal tactic aims to asphyxiate and incinerate any survivor who dreams of playing hero. With the British backyard turned into a shallow grave, their bloodlust reaches its breaking point. The bombing was just foreplay. Now the troops descend to devour the asphalt. The offensive simply shits on the city's soul. The unshakable symbols of faith that survived previous wars turn to dust in 3 seconds, proving that Millennium doesn't give a damn about any sanctuary. The scale of this absurdity soon proves to be worse than some half-assed military operation. These guys' intention is literally to delete the English capital from the server, swallowing the entire infrastructure in pure sadistic annihilation. With the entire city kissing the asphalt and defenses completely shattered, the occupation goes totally batshit. That bombing was just the beginning, because the invading troops finally get the green light to dive straight into this fiery purgatory. The official green light for the drop acts like an adrenaline shot straight to the vein. The facade of military discipline turns into sickening sadism, where the only order is to rip open the gut of any idiot who dares to breathe down there. This sick joke gets suffocating when the invaders bust through the roofs and pavement to shove their dominance down everyone's throats. That threat, hovering up above, is now literally kicking down everyone's front door. These guys show they have brains by hijacking the transmission towers in a split second. It's a surgical strike to leave the entire country blind, deaf, and crying without being able to call anyone for help. The final kick in the balls comes when the heads of state are simply wiped out. With the leadership decapitated and in the dark, the rules evaporate and national defense turns into a brutal survival reality show. The British finally realized the invasion had a little inside help. The cheap promise of immortality made a bunch of turncoats from their own base spread their legs and pull the enemy right into their living room. Integra takes this in with pure disgust on her face. To her, selling your ass to the enemy just to stop aging is the most pathetic and unforgivable level of cowardice anyone could ever reach. Amidst the military chaos, a fearful leader finally bites the bullet instead of running away. He clings to the microscopic chance of mounting an attack on the base, figuring it's much better to go down hand in hand with doom. The boss's plan now is to not waste his team for nothing. He pulls the spotlight of death right onto his own forehead, ordering his soldiers to flee through any hole they can still find. But the order to flee is summarily ignored. The grunts decide to tell the boss to shove it, proving that the hard-on for dying huddled together in battle is way stronger than the will to breathe. The weight of this scene shows some pure end-of-the-world brotherhood. It warms the heart seeing elite killers accept being turned into mincemeat just so their boss doesn't die crying alone. While headquarters ties the noose around its own neck, the Millennium lunatics get front row seats to watch the British turn to dust. The game is flowing exactly as this bunch of villains scripted it, but Integra refuses to lay down and die in this useless hole. She's playing a different game. She knows she has to make it out of this hellhole alive to lead the violent payback against the freaks. The boss then orders to turn on the meat grinder with no reverse button. Any poor bastard who tries to block her team's path will be sliced into bloody ribbons on the spot. As she advances, the devastation in the streets crosses the line of absurdity. Centuries of history and thousands of people are being deleted by a massive, absurd tsunami of annihilation. This crushing humiliation turns the city into a giant billboard of failure. It's a bizarre, permanent nightmare tattooed right on the face of the country. But reality swallows London, and death kicks down the front door, spreading a sweet dose of despair. The illusion of safety goes right down the drain. The chubby major sets up the perfect siege, dominating the skies and blowing up escape routes. It's a sadistic surgical strike to guarantee the biggest bloodbath possible. The cold-bloodedness of these lunatics is bizarre. They unleash hell in this massacre with absurd synchronization, parading through the streets like it's a holiday. With London turning into a giant BBQ, the death march doesn't stop. These sadists dragged hell to the surface and are now parading through the flames. People's brains short-circuit when they realize these invaders aren't normal. Watching horror legends chew up the neighborhood destroys whatever's left of their sanity. And for Millennium's top brass, the slaughter is coldly tallied up. The Major conducts this bizarre orchestra of carnage like a mad maestro of the apocalypse. The cruelest joke is the contagion. Every poor bastard chewed up becomes an unpaid zombie intern for the troop, just a disposable pawn in their giant meat grinder. Not even the cops can hold the line. The defense collapses the exact second the badge wearers realize their basic firearms training is useless against monsters. But this human mincemeat is just a smokescreen. The Major is using this giant pool of blood as bait to draw the real opposition out for a fight. Then a pathetic little spark of resistance decides to show up. The rest of the police force cries while trying to set up a half-assed barricade, praying they don't end up as monster chow. But the zombie games are over. When Millennium's overpowered elite troops hit the asphalt, a choreographed beatdown begins that borders on sheer cowardice. The system totally crashed, and the useless barricade melts like butter. The human defense line gets deleted, catching everyone completely with their pants down. But these freaks' god mode gets broken out of nowhere. A brutal smash to the face proves these bastards can bleed, and the cavalry has finally arrived. The big boss Integra steps out into the open to tame the chaos with blood in her eyes. She leaves the bunker and takes control in the most badass way possible. She honors the futile sacrifice of the dead guards and takes charge. From here on out, this freak safari falls into the lap of someone with a PhD in grinding these scumbags to dust. The pudgy Major recalculates his sick game without blinking. He hurls his troops straight at her, desperate to behead the boss before Hellsing can react. The lieutenant chosen for the slaughter embraces the gig, practically drooling with lust. The scent of spilled blood is all this sadist needs to completely lose her mind. But for the fat guy, just crushing the boss in the streets isn't enough. He unleashes a hail of heavy lead, brutally blasting Hellsing HQ to pulverize its very foundations. But the nerd forgot the joint isn't empty. Hellsing's psychopathic trump card is still inside, practically drooling at the chance to crush the invaders to ashes. Things just went seriously south. While our boss Integra tries to escape, Millennium's undead Nazis already have a lock on her coordinates. The hunt through the streets of London devolves into absolute chaos. Except she and her assassin butler turn their damn car into a makeshift tank. They violently plow right through the useless infantry trying to block their path, until a bizarre glitch breaks the tension. Right in the middle of the London carnage, the radio picks up a transmission from a random ally trying to reach out. It's General Penwood, stranded within the HQ's defenses. Knowing it's game over for him, he turns on the mic to deliver the most suicidal speech of his entire life. The old-timer swallows his fear of ending up dead meat, and his hatred speaks much louder. Rejecting the damsel in distress role, he sets up an insane booby trap for the invaders. The blood-sucking squad spawns into the room reeking of pure arrogance. To the zombies, this stranded human is just the last trash mob to clear before they platinum the city. But the old man's lethal prank works perfectly. The explosive circus rigged in the shadows turns the room into a massive, inescapable mass grave. The suicide bombing blasts the Millennium scum to kingdom come, making damn sure the villains won't inherit this base. A respectful game over screen for an unlikely hero. Far away, a reality check smacks the boss hard. She swallows her grief, realizing her shoulders now carry the blood of those who blew themselves up to help her. The trip devolves into a crazy drag race right in the middle of the apocalypse. The duo floors the gas at light speed so they don't become fast food for the mob out on the streets, until their juggernaut slams into a brutal halt. The nightmare arrives. They lose their nitro and stall out, turning into a giant target sitting in the spotlight. They hit the jackpot in the death bingo. A freaky entity blocks the highway, overflowing with enough power to jam the gears of their getaway in pure fear. That's when the luxury butler pulls the pin on the grenade. He realizes that if his boss is going to keep breathing, he needs to hold the line and face the freak all by himself. Swallowing her tears and her bruised ego, she reboots her mental BIOS and steps back up to the leadership podium. Clashing head-on with this would just be spitting on her partner's fresh sacrifice. With no time for cliche goodbyes, Integra steps down onto the foul asphalt. The bureaucracy from hell dictates she leave her mega-armored umbrella behind and book it. With the payload safely out of reach, the sweet servant facade drops. The old-timer fully embraces the spirit of the psycho killer that cemented his infamous reputation back in the day. day. With no time for monologues, the butler goes all in on an insane opening attack. The goal is to slice up and delete the problem from the server once and for all. But the illusion of victory is instantly shattered. The flawless strike that would shred through any top-tier armor hits an absolute cheat wall and gets completely deadlocked in mid-air. Millennium's legendary Pokemon finally shows its true face. The beast is the pure epitome of Nazi bullying, an absolute freak sitting right in the VIP section of villainy. The pressure cooker of rusted hatred finally explodes. After rotting in the waiting room for 50 years, the most suicidal slugfest of the century truly pops off. Up in the VIP booth, the nerd psychopath who designed this chaos is eating it all up. The invading big boss is thrilled to see Hellsing falling right into his fatal trap, and the lid slams shut with the most tense game over warning of the night. With no soldiers and no VIP hitman, the queen is running completely exposed through the jungle, her survival chances plummeting to absolute zero. The game of hide and seek begins. With Integra thrown to the wolves, Millennium hunts the head of Hellsing through the ruins with explicit orders not to let her slip away. But backing down was never the boss's style. Knowing that playing ninja won't work against an army, she says to hell with it and decides to carve her way out through sheer brute force. Except flooring it doesn't do jack shit against the Twilight fan club. The bloodsuckers make the engine's horsepower completely useless, tailgating her like it's a walk in the park, and that's where the trap springs. Millennium wasn't just playing tag. The sadists read her escape route and locked the door, setting up the perfect ambush. The monster's patience hits zero and things get crazy. They pull out giant toys designed to melt any armor that crosses their path. The hit delivers on its promise and crushes everything. The brutality of the impact cancels any chance of a getaway and swallows the road, putting an end to the joyride. But the lady is tough as nails and refuses to die. Using the momentum from the crash, she drags her battered body out of the puddle of destruction. With the motorized getaway deleted, the game of tag turns into a forced hug. The squad wastes no time cornering the blonde, taking full advantage of the damage the crash caused, except the game over screen gets brutally cancelled. One of the tough guys becomes dinner in the blink of an eye, and the bloodsuckers party gets sidelined before they can even lay a finger on the blonde. Everyone's brain just freezes. A colossal madman drops into the scene out of nowhere, popping up like a bizarre, hyper-violent wall between the boss and the rabid mutts. The boss doesn't even blink, fixing her posture like an absolute queen. With her ego maxed out, she doesn't give a crap about the army drooling at her neck, treating them like annoying flies at a barbecue. Suddenly, the whole scene is swallowed by an absurdly overpowered mystical cheat code. A busted shield drops out of nowhere and tears up the rules of engagement in a millisecond. Karma hits like a freight train. A counterattack drives the knife in deep, turning the cocky tough guys into a bunch of punching bags suffering a disgusting and violent slaughter. The hero shows his face, and it's almost comical. Hellsing's guardian angel is literally a psychopathic enemy. The guy logs into the server, turning the bullying session into a literal monster brawl. The smoke clears, and Integra calls out the name of the psycho who turned the troops into mashed potatoes. Realizing that the mad dog of the Catholic Church is right there throws the whole ambush vibe in the trash, making room for some dirty political drama. The priest goes completely nuts. Drunk on his own psychopathy, he pretends he forgot the orders from the big bosses in Rome, which were to just eat popcorn and watch the fight from afar instead of beating up the extras. Things get tense when the religious squad decides to call out the priest's slip-up. They point out that saving an English heretic's skin is basically biting the hand that feeds them. The squad of lunatics proving that Rome sent armed men to London completely ruins the mood. Stress hits the red line when she realizes she just traded vampires for a bizarre death squad. Even left to the wolves and drowning in a sea of assassin nuns, the boss faces the danger head-on. She yells at the Pope's stiffs to take it down a notch and stay out of a backyard that was never theirs. The killer snaps back, overflowing with disgust, with an aggressive "shut up." Proving that the lady's authority means nothing in his little club, he makes it clear that this paper-thin piece is about to go down the drain. The dust finally settles, but the murderous tension between Hellsing and the Vatican priest is still insanely thick. That maniac's trail of chaos does nothing to help anyone relax. But the real threat doesn't give a shit about this dogfight. Millennium sees an opening in this pointless brawl and decides to kick the door down to finish the job. Here's the Pope's official declaration of war. What looked like just one psychotic priest turns out to be a heavy military op. turning that ambush into a bizarre holy barbecue. The noose is tightening nicely. The Vatican army has already claimed the high ground like chess masters, cutting off any miserable chance for these uniformed clowns to run crying back home. The fan club of zealots responds in unison, relishing their role as God's butchers. The morons know they already have a one-way ticket to hell, but they just use it as pre-workout for the slaughter. The pointless chanting ends and the Syth drops. Any shred of pity is crushed right then and there, making way for sheer absurd savagery where no one gives a damn about apologies or forgiving sins. In the middle of this blood orgy, the blonde catches the irony. These so-called miracle saviors are unhinged psychopaths, just as twisted and toxic as the exact demons they swore to kill. This scum swallows the reputation of Judas whole. They love playing dirty, knowing damn well they're tossing their own souls in the trash just to shield the top brass of the church. But only an idiot thinks these guys just run around screaming. The squad pushes forward in an ancient, dusty Roman tactical formation, making it crystal clear that this bloodbath is on a schedule and packed with calculated malice. With every miserable second, Millennium's defenses are trampled without an ounce of mercy. The squad of Molgoth bats that thought they were the apex is violently wiped off the map like trash. London finally gets the memo that it's turned into a doomsday playground. The Vatican didn't just catch a flight to offer their 2 cents, but to vomit the pure apocalypse all over this pathetic, heretical scum. The carnage in the streets spirals out of fucking control. The city turns into a giant meat grinder for any idiot too slow to outrun the inquisitorial rampage. Caught in the middle of this insane firefight, Integra finds out the hard way that the Vatican's heroes are just as unhinged and deadly as the invaders themselves. From their VIP seats, the church's top brass just grabs some popcorn to watch the slaughter, plotting their next moves with the coldness of a sociopath. The most unhinged side of the church finally shows its true colors. They cheer on the bloodbath, thinking it's totally fair to send everyone to the graveyard just out of religious spite. The widespread chaos falls right into Maxwell's lap like a gift. It's the perfect power vacuum for the Vatican to show up as the only cult running the whole world. The Vatican finally gets off its ass to show how it's done. The ridiculously overpowered military arsenal hidden in the church's basement is brought out to clear the board. A monstrous army of zealots gathers. We're talking thousands of sick freaks, dying to get their hands dirty for God, just waiting for the starting whistle. The guy ditches the desk jockey life. The entire goddamn Ninth Crusade is dumped into Maxwell's lap, turning the asshole into an untouchable demigod. The Archbishop's mask finally slips off for good. Any drop of empathy goes down the drain, spitting back out a god complex that's completely off the rails. The Rosary army starts grinding its gears. Rome decides to use the massacre as a bullshit excuse to bleach the planet and take over the whole damn globe. But right at the peak of this power trip, the radar picks up a grotesque glitch. The aircraft carrier everyone swore was scrap metal rises from the ashes out for blood. The Vatican crew shits their pants seeing the Hellsing ship cutting through the sea. The laws of physics weep watching that carcass stay afloat and slice through the ocean. The tricked-out engine doesn't need a drop of gas. The beast is being towed by pure vampire voodoo, tearing through the water like a demonic torpedo. From afar, instead of panicking, Alucard gets thrilled. The fanged bastard realizes the city's stage is perfectly polished for the bloody shit show he loves. The vampire opens himself wide to embrace the total madness. He puts the pedal to the metal, ready to unleash his power on any motherfucker who crosses his path. The demon's warning arrives, but that coward Maxwell swears he can take the heat. He thinks one dog off its leash won't be enough to implode his war. The Pope's fleet takes off in style. Thousands of maniacs bored with their mouths watering, absolutely drooling over the chance to paint all of Europe with other people's blood. Maxwell drools in the corner watching his little game unfold. The poor bastard drank so much ego juice that he's high as a kite, swearing up and down that he's now the holy warden of the universe. Except in the other corner of the ring, Millennium doesn't give a flying fuck. The Nazis rev their engines and roll out the red carpet to welcome the Crusaders with a hail of bullets. With the dance floor blowing up, Millennium kicks their dirty tricks into overdrive. The green light flashes, and Zorin Blitz's heavy-duty unit is pushed onto the runway. The genius move isn't to clash head-on, but to blow up the enemy's house. Since the Hellsing crew is scattered, their empty headquarters becomes the perfect banquet to be wiped off the map. The idiots from Millennium find out the hard way that the Vatican didn't bring handcuffs, they brought coffins. The Iscariot force wipes the streets clean with a brutality worthy of psychopaths. Leading the charge of this massacre, Father Anderson turns the hunt for the Nazi bloodsuckers into his own personal fever dream. He carries out a bizarre purge fueled by pure divine fury. Right in the middle of this slaughterhouse, Integra Hellsing just breathes in the chaos. Surrounded by the church's biggest psychopaths, this absolute boss of a woman doesn't break a single sweat, but the Catholic Church isn't about to hand over their biggest rival on a silver platter. The atmosphere gets heavy the exact second they block Integra's exit with a completely silent, deadly threat. Staring down an obvious firing squad, this woman's coldness reaches sick levels. Instead of crying, the head of Hellsing lectures her captors and flips the board with pure moral superiority. Smelling the fear on these idiots, she spits out an absurd ultimatum. The madwoman bets her own head on their cowardice, daring the priests to actually shoot or get the hell out of her way once and for all. Father Anderson's macho code screams louder, refusing to back down like a coward. With this mind trick, Integra not only saves her own skin, but turns her captors into her personal VIP escort lapdogs. Thus, the most bizarre squad London has ever seen is born. Mortal enemies parading together through the ruins, with Integra setting the pace while the priests bitterly swallow their pride. Meanwhile, Millennium's flying troops cross the skies. Under the command of Zorin Blitz, the target is now the Hellsing Manor, the last trench they want to smash to pieces. The order is to wipe everyone out mercilessly. A heavy rain of destruction falls with the sole purpose of turning the enemy headquarters into a massive crater-filled parking lot. But the Nazis' premature celebration is cut short immediately. The missiles are shredded before they even touch the target, proving that the manor's owners are armed to the teeth. The counterattack is brutal and the damage is beautiful. The invading fleet loses ships left and right, with all their flying arrogance being humiliated by precise shots sprouting from the ground. Hellsing's stolen trump card kicks the door down. Seras Victoria carries the base's defense on her back, holding a gun absurdly massive enough to swallow a whole army by itself. Pip becomes the nerdy coach of this insane defense. The cheeky mercenary drops a few jokes to hide how shit-scared he is, coordinating the psychotic plan to rain lead non-stop on these damn invaders. And here the tutorial mode officially ends. The whole thing turns into a vengeful bloodbath in a split second, where the goal is to squeeze every last drop of blood from the pathetic enemies without an ounce of mercy. Hellsing's defense strategy works like a hyperactive insecticide. The front line of flying Nazis gets absolutely mopped up, turning to dust in midair before they can even scratch the paint on the headquarters. Seeing her fleet getting battered, the stubborn Zorin Blitz throws logic out the window. Going completely off the rails, she makes a desperate call and orders the searchlights turned on to find the shooter. The beam of light pierces the dead of night, illuminating the entire mansion. It's a blatant warning that an all-out bloodbath is about to kick off. But the searchlight reveals the invaders' absolute worst nightmare. Gigantic, brutal cannons are already aimed right at them, just waiting for the perfect moment to shred through any armor. Behind those weapons is Seras Victoria, stepping up as the ultimate killing machine. She drops the scared rookie act to become a literal wall of reinforced concrete defending the base. While the sky burns down on the ground, Pip Bernadotte looks at the wreckage and it finally hits him. Seeing the capital reduced to rubble and the entire city wiped off the map hits the mercenary like a punch to the gut. The agony of watching innocents get slaughtered flips a switch of madness in his head. Pip throws professionalism out the window and declares that their response will be an aggressive extermination driven by pure bloodlust. The golden target is already painted high above. Focusing on the commander's airship, Pip puts all his chips on Seras's cannon to blow the mothership to pieces once and for all. Taking the order, the blonde puts the weight of it all on her own shoulders. Drawing on demonic stamina, she unleashes an absurd continuous barrage of gunfire, turning into a frantic human machine gun. The onslaught tears through the sky. The imposing airship that once paraded over London eats the bullets, devastating its entire structure and shredding its hull to pieces. The invaders' little party has failed miserably. The floating Zeppelin is now nothing more than a flaming dead weight, spiraling out of control as it begins to plummet. Refusing to accept defeat, Zorin goes full kamikaze. She steers the wreckage of the falling ship directly toward the mansion, turning the flying carcass into a suicidal meteor. Pip sees the colossal mass hurtling toward them and yells in panic for everyone to bail. Standing around waiting for that flying behemoth to crush them is a guaranteed death wish. But Seras ignores her captain's orders and throws sanity out the window. Going completely feral, she plants her feet in the ground, refusing to budge a single inch. She opens fire once more, unleashing an insane blast of energy. The colossal shot rips through the sky, punching right into the fat belly of the plummeting threat. The obliterating impact destroys the threat for good. The deadly meteor is blown to dust in midair, completely disintegrating before it can crush the crew on the ground. Watching the explosion, the mercenary squad lets their guard down. The whole crew sighs in relief, thinking they've won the game and survived the worst of it. But Pip instantly notices the suspicious silence and orders the team to stay alert. He knows that celebrating now is a one-way ticket to the afterlife, because the danger isn't over yet. He was right. A grotesque squad of vampires emerges from the smoke and wreckage. Destroying the Zeppelin didn't quench these monsters' thirst for blood. To top off the nightmare, Zorin Blitz herself steps onto the mansion's lawn, completely unharmed. With a sadistic smirk, she announces that the real carnage on the ground is only just beginning. Before the smoke clears, Pip's mind takes a chaotic dive into the past. He relives that classic childhood trauma, the kind of messed up memory that turned him into the lunatic we know today. His grandfather gives it to him straight, no sugarcoating. The old man confirms their family tree is soaked in blood, and that death is the family business for these freaks. In desperate tears, little Pip searches for a heroic motive to justify the killing, but the answer crushes his dreams. They don't kill for an ideology, they kill purely for a paycheck. That's when the kid sucks it up and embraces this twisted freedom. Stepping onto the front lines for a quick buck becomes the heart of the family business, sealing his fate as a mercenary right then and there. The flashback ends and reality kicks down the door. The Hellsing Manor is getting turned into Swiss cheese, ammo is drying up, and the human blockade needs some jerry-rigged defenses like yesterday. That wimpy kid gave way to a cold-blooded strategist. Without missing a beat, Pip fully embraces his mercenary role and sets up a hellish barbecue to welcome the invading morons. Outside, the villainous lieutenant is oozing arrogance from every pore. Underestimating the manor on a suicidal level, she swears she's going to turn human flesh into a bloody pulp before dinner. The onslaught begins. This mob of smooth-brained immortals ignores fatigue and rushes straight to their deaths like a herd of drooling rhinos charging the defenses. But the reality check is quick and humiliating. That invincible god complex goes straight down the drain when the ground proves they just walked into a VIP slaughterhouse set up specifically for them. Pip licks his lips as he watches the panic set in on the other side. It was the perfect plan. Crush the elite squad's inflated morale by delivering a brutal punch of reality right to their faces. Once the panic button is pushed, no amount of black magic is going to save them. The explosion wipes out the frontline grunts before their brains can even process the carnage. The security system works like a motorized meat grinder. The pride of these bastard invaders runs headfirst into a crushing wall of absurdly choreographed violence. The lead villain goes into shock. The trauma of watching her precious pets get completely wrecked by ordinary humans shatters the idiot's ego with a touch of sadistic flair. This is Bernadotte's famous calculated Uno reverse. The bloodsuckers might be able to read minds, but it's impossible to guess what a primed landmine is thinking. Pip teaches these worthless scrubs the true power of being human. He rubs it in their faces that shitting your pants in fear isn't a weakness. It's the brilliant instinct of cowardice that makes you rig the floor with explosives and completely wipe out the brute force of these chumps. The human defense line unloads on them without mercy. Pip knows their only chance of not turning into dog meat is to crush this bizarre supernatural freak show with brute force. The brilliant plan pays off, and the storm of lead pushes the enemy back. Seeing the vampires chicken out and scramble for cover, Pip makes the call to hold the line. Chasing after those freaks right now would be suicide, but the lull in fighting gives Pip a harsh reality check. He realizes that containment tactics only scare off normal armies. The monstrosity out there isn't falling back out of self-preservation, proving the real apocalypse hasn't even started yet. The doomsday scenario finally comes knocking. The enemy commander herself ignores the gunfire and breaches the area, violently breaking the stalemate. She forces the dreaded close-quarters combat that Pip swore would be fatal, except the attack is far from physical. The vampire plays her dirty trick, activating a bizarre power designed purely to melt human sanity. The mansion's defenses instantly become useless garbage. Pure panic finally infects the marksman in the face of this absurdity. The logic that kept the guys standing completely crumbles. They realize the hard way that their fancy machine guns ain't worth a damn against this nightmare. The nightmare isolates the squad from the real world. They aren't playing war in the mansion anymore. They're locked in the enemy freak's mental prison. In this sick illusion, even a blink guarantees a one-way ticket to hell. Pip tries to act like the tough guy in control, but his leadership melts like ice cream in the sun when faced with chaos no one there trained to handle. Morale tanks and the squad is left completely aimless. At the peak of despair, a saving memory surfaces from the gutters of the subconscious. It's the obvious realization that their 5 senses have been hacked by magic. This opens up an OP shortcut to escape the projected lie. Flipping Following the fuck it switch, the chains of the nightmare crack and turn to dust. In the blink of an eye, the madness is dispelled. The mental chaos is instantly replaced by the cold, familiar reality of the battlefield. Even though the spell is broken, the mercenaries' brains are already mush. The terror was so overwhelming that the guys glitch out miserably, whining that their bodies have completely given out. These hardcore soldiers have turned into paralyzed little sheep who can't take a single step. The squad's defender, the vampire lieutenant, realizes shit has hit the fan. She tries to act as a beacon of sanity, screaming at the idiots to ignore their cowardly instincts and see through the cheap magic trick. But the collective freakout is deafening. In the midst of this mass meltdown, the enemy commander struts forward mockingly. Relishing their vulnerability, the bitch shows up with the swagger of someone who's already cleared the map. The mental hack melted the entire line, leaving nothing but to mop up and finish the humiliation. Since the pep talk failed, the defender realizes the only language left is a boot to the face. She charges the front line alone. Banking on massive brute force, she decides to crush the threat at its root and act as a human shield for the defenseless deadweights. Except this Blitz hits a fucking OP magic wall. The enemy tanks the heavy attack like it's nothing, proving brute force is a joke to her. The psycho makes a point to rub it in that she owns the server, making it clear the level gap borders on the ridiculous. A harsh reality check slaps the lieutenant in the face when she sees her trump card flop. She falls back into a defensive turtle mode, swallowing the bitter pill that clashing head-on against OP magic won't cut it. The tables turn brutally. Now, only pure survival instinct remains to keep her allies from turning into jelly. The illusion goes down the drain, but reality comes to collect. Pip's squad can barely process that they've regained their sanity, as the battlefield remains an unforgiving meat grinder. It's a desperate race just to survive the collapse of this nightmare. Target in sight. Our vampire decides it's the perfect time to cut the psychological crap. She aims her weapon, ready to show the invader just how big the organization's heavy caliber is when it comes knocking. But the joy is short-lived. The enemy commander tanks the impact, rubbing it in everyone's face that she doesn't just rely on cheap mind tricks. She proves she's an absolute monster by taking a direct hit head-on too. Things reach a catastrophic level. The commander fries everyone's perception in the arena with a brutal spell. An absolute terror is shoved in their faces, designed exclusively to completely crush the squad's psyche. The bitch smiles with a sickeningly mocking grin. That giant terror haunting everyone outside, it was all just a pathetic smokescreen to fool the suckers. The real danger walks through the front door. The building's wall is brutally blown open, catching everyone with their pants down. The surprise attack proves that the real threat was already breathing in the same room as them. The ugly mugs of the enemy troops finally show up. The crew finds themselves surrounded by hellish beasts that turn the hallway into a literal meat grinder. They're screwed, with nowhere to run. Without a second thought, the lieutenant throws caution to the wind and puts her own body in the line of fire. Enough with the useless defense. Now this girl is the only meat shield saving everyone from total annihilation. The boss gives the order to wipe everyone out. The little invasion game now turns into an absolute sickening eradication. Today's bloodbath scoreboard calls for 0 survivors. Now Pip has to make a drastic decision. He flips the script absurdly fast, accepting the loss of the entire territory. The goal now is simply to keep the last of the cannon fodder under his command from becoming dead meat. The plan is simple and desperate. The mercenaries fall back to take cover, while the group's resident monster is let off the leash. She's geared up to strike terror and act as the ultimate predator. Until, at the peak of the tension, the mercenary throws all seriousness out the window. Pip pulls off a chaotic and random move, some blatant clowning around. It's a bizarre attempt to relieve the pressure in the girl's head before the whole circus burns to the ground. The sheer audacity snaps the girl out of her inertia. Her little fear of death vanishes instantly, replaced by a seething rage. Now she just wants to tear apart the cheeky mercenary who decided to grab her in the middle of a firefight, and then it clicks. Pip's crazy stunt was pure genius. That invasive grope was an emergency maneuver to reboot the poor girl's blue-screening brain. It worked like a charm, and the beast is jump-started with blood in her eyes. With her head back in the game, she dives straight into the meat grinder. No more running around like a headless chicken. It turns into an armored rampage fueled by pure fury, focused on obliterating anyone standing in her way. Left behind, the useless squad commits to one final act of idiocy. Their little mercenary contract goes straight into the trash. What drives these guys now is a purely suicidal loyalty, swearing not to let the girl's efforts go to waste. The myth of dying like a movie hero goes straight into the sewer. Pip accepts that the squad's demise is going to be messy, agonizing, and have absolutely zero glamour. Incredibly, these sick bastards actually find a macabre comfort in the idea. The murder-suicide pact is sealed. Any lingering fear of kicking the bucket is completely gone. All that's left is a twisted friendship between lunatics who have accepted the devil's embrace and decided to ride straight down to hell, laughing. The first line of defense melts faster than ice cream on asphalt, not giving these idiots a single millisecond to come up with a strategy. Cadet boot camp training ain't worth shit here. The power gap is so humiliating that any resistance is swept away like trash, making it clear this is a massacre with zero lube. The sacred little clubhouse has crumbled, and falling back is the only option left. This invasion hits a whole new level of bizarre, nailing the place's coffin shut and proving that whoever's trapped inside is totally screwed. The trap snaps shut nice and tight and the encirclement is absolute. The claustrophobic realization that there's no hole left to hide in turns basic fear into a full-blown psychotic breakdown. In the center of this chaos, the leader's crown weighs a ton. The boss is forced to swallow his own tears, knowing that acting like a cold-blooded psychopath is his only shot at damage control. Order is brought back with a slap to the troops' faces. The word retreat is violently ripped off the table, rubbing it in everyone's mugs that this stinking shithole is going to be the stage for their final performance. The ultimatum is a masterclass in manipulation to artificially inflate their courage. The choice isn't between survival or a coffin, it's whether they become fertilizer cowering in a corner or die shooting until their hearts stop. But that shred of hope lasts a grand total of 0 milliseconds. The final barricade takes a kick to the teeth and completely collapses, as the monster breaches the haven and tears everything to shreds without an ounce of pity. All that's left on the floor is a puddle of ketchup from the slaughter. Decades of life and cute little shooting lessons are deleted from existence in the blink of an eye, leaving behind nothing but a disgusting toss-up of total annihilation. A fool's errand always fails. The hail of lead fired out of pure survival instinct is met like a tickle by the invading freak, who brushes off the attack with sheer supernatural reflexes. With the red carpet rolled out, the mastermind behind the slaughter steps in, flaunting boundless arrogance. The sloppy grunt work from earlier is officially over, and now the hunt cranks up 10 levels of insanity. For the home team, the blow is fatal. The captain watches his pawns get turned into ground beef, and the shock of throwing everyone into this meat grinder completely melts his brain. The ultimate proof of their uselessness comes when the monsters stroll out of the gun smoke without a single scratch. A gaping hole that would decimate an army simply vanishes into the immortal flesh of this freak, which doesn't even feel the damage. The queen of this shitshow gets tired of playing nice. She drops the fistfights and turns on her main magic hack, trading brute force for a diabolical mind invasion. The cozy little HQ they swore to protect catches the enemy virus hard, mutating into a giant madhouse. Forget firing lines. The environment itself turns into a trap with no way out. Fighting against the devil's Wi-Fi is a lost cause. The mental plague shatters the idiot captain's defenses, making him forget the difference between the ceiling and the floor, while he endures an absurd existential mindfuck. He crashes straight into the limbo of his own schizophrenia. The drumming of the guns dies out, replaced by the dead silence of a massive, deeply buried trauma in his head. The final carnage plays out in the little theater of his garbage memories. The captain's fried brain violently throws him out of the fight. The shock of a traumatic memory hits him like a freight train. Any focus on continuing the battle is completely shattered. His tough guy facade melts like ice cream on hot asphalt in the face of the illusion. His rational side screams that this lie was planted in his head, but the crushing grief pins the poor bastard to the ground, leaving him completely paralyzed. This enemy victory oozes with pure sadism. Breaking the leader required zero physical effort, just some sick psychological manipulation. The human squad is left wide open at the worst possible moment. With their guard down, the cruelty reaches absolutely sickening levels. To the immortal invading force, the humans don't even register as a threat. They're nothing but pathetic appetizers in a macabre feast, but the immortal's illusion of invincibility goes down the drain in the blink of an eye. The hallway that served as their sadistic playground suddenly flips the script. Out of nowhere, it becomes ground zero for a mindlessly savage and unstoppable counterattack from the resistance. The containment squad shows they don't have time to take prisoners. Their massive firepower wipes the invaders off the map. In a brutal twist of fate, the roles of hunter and prey are instantly reversed. The tears for the fallen quickly turn into a bloodthirsty vow. Mercy is tossed straight out the window by the squad. The only justice on the menu now is violently crushing whoever started this sick joke. What was once defense becomes a massive wall of pure aggression. Their thirst for revenge spits out an endless hail of bullets. The brains of any immortal who dares take a wrong step in their direction get blown to bits. But going completely berserk like this takes a heavy toll on the facility facility structure. The environment literally cracks in half under the immense pressure. This massive breach threatens to throw their hard-earned new advantage straight into the trash. The punishment for this security lapse is swift and ruthless. The enemy exploits the breach in the environment to strike. A heavy price is exacted from anyone caught with their pants down in the middle of the chaos. To utterly crush the team's morale, reality plays dirty by handing them a total ammo drought. Their guns click empty at the worst possible second. The squad realizes in pure shock that they have absolutely nothing left to fight back with. The panic goes through the roof as they realize it's the end. Despair turns comrades into weeping wrecks begging to be put out of their misery. They embrace the impending defeat, crying out for a humiliating game over. But right in the middle of this weeping, emotional madhouse, pure stubbornness kicks into high gear. The leader spits in the face of surrender with a sadistic sneer. He forces everyone to suck it up and fight for survival through sheer violence and absolute rebellion. The line of defense has hit rock bottom. With resources depleted, the only rule now is survival through sheer desperation. Every bullet decides who buys another 5 minutes of life and who becomes fertilizer. To make matters worse, the grim reality is rubbed in the troops' faces. Command confirms that no one is coming to save their skins. They are completely isolated and their chances of making it out alive have just dropped to zero. Facing an absolute bloodbath, the brutal truth finally sinks in. The massive enemy assault isn't about taking territory. The sadistic goal of this overwhelming force is to turn absolutely everyone in the base into mincemeat. Amidst the chaos, the only logical choice is a grim one. A wounded comrade is put down in a cold, necessary act, ensuring that sentimentality doesn't cloud the desperate decisions of those still fighting to survive. The invasion finally breaks through, revealing its hideous face. Bloodthirsty creatures exploit the breach to turn the place into a slaughterhouse playground, wiping out everyone in sight without meeting any resistance. Cornered, the end seems certain when a lethal blast is fired without mercy. It's the final blow, guaranteed to wipe this doomed squad off the map and extinguish any lingering hope for a miracle. But in a bizarre plot twist, the Reaper swings the wrong way. The massive attack blasts right through the backs of the invading army, wiping out the enemy command in a monstrous reversal that completely rewrites the slaughter. Emerging from the bloody smoke, their true salvation makes an entrance. The most absurd powerhouse of a tank finally steps into the arena, armed to the teeth and turning the tide of battle completely upside down. Witnessing this brutal destruction, the captain breathes a massive sigh of relief. He realizes that the girl with the giant cannon didn't just show up to save their asses, but managed to crush the threat in the blink of an eye. Knowing she'd get absolutely wrecked in a contest of brute force, the enemy leader refuses a direct confrontation. She throws honor out the window, dodging a physical brawl to rely on a cheap and cowardly tactic. The villain pulls a bizarre trick out of her sleeve. Activating an overpowered mind manipulation ability, she orchestrates a twisted mental circus designed purely to fry our gun-toting heroine's sanity. A blinding isolation overtakes the heroine's mind. She is ripped from reality and hurled into a personal void, completely severing her connection to the physical world around her. Seeing the girl paralyzed and freaking out, the wounded captain tries to act as her anchor to sanity. He screams at the top of his lungs, trying to shatter the illusion and stop her from sinking completely into the enemy's web. But the spell is too strong, plunging her straight into the tragedy of her past. The illusion forces her to relive her childhood as an angry orphan, turning her unresolved pain into a relentless barrage of violence against the other kids. The memory flashes forward to her youth, where she found a focus to keep from losing her mind completely. Obsessed with her late father's legacy, she nurtured the dream of wearing a police uniform, desperately trying to piece together her shattered life. That is, until the mental assault targets her ultimate trauma, hitting replay on her darkest moment. The heroine is given a VIP seat to helplessly watch the brutal murder of her own parents. The macabre loop cages her soul, forcing her to relive the absolute worst day of her life over and over again. The nightmare takes shape, forcing this useless heroine to relive the exact moment her childhood went down the drain. Seeing that things have completely gone to hell, despair kicks in hard. The parents' suicidal sacrifice is accepted as the only possible way out. Their final mission is to push their daughter to safety, trying to make sure she doesn't end up as worm food too. But fear turns into the fury of someone ready to raise hell. In a pathetic attempt to play the hero, the little girl grabs the first piece of junk she can find. She decides to try and scratch the abomination that just ruined her life. Except reality checks her instantly. The monster's patience evaporates, and the punishment for being cocky drops on her without mercy. This cardboard resistance crashes headfirst into a lethal, absolute brick brick wall. The sadistic illusion rubs it in her face that the beatings were just the appetizer. The real terror is getting a front row seat to the defilement and destruction of everything she held dear. Her innocent mind is mercilessly shattered. It's a total meltdown. The poor girl's brain just pulls the plug and shuts down, unable to stomach this recycled nightmare. She freezes up like a system crash, permanently stuck in the pathetic scene where she became a certified orphan. With her mind destroyed, the illusion logs off, tossing her raw back into the real world. The enemy cracks a wicked, victorious smirk. She loves knowing she broke the poor girl from the inside out before even landing a physical blow. Without giving her a second to breathe, the villain goes into full butcher mode. The beatdown is apocalyptic, tearing flesh and completely retiring the heroine from any chance of a counterattack. The extreme physical pain finally matches the gaping hole left in her soul. The failure is absolute. She melts into the rock-bottom floor like jelly, completely defeated. On the other side, the villain celebrates her victory, humiliating the useless fool who actually thought she could bite her ankles. The executioner finally readies the scythe. After frying the crybaby's brain, beating her to a pulp, and obliterating her courage, the psychopath prepares the fatal blow. The freak show is about to close its curtains by hitting delete on her existence. Except the devil is late to his own party. Right when the coffin was already paid for, some cocky badass shows up, completely tearing up the rulebook. The unexpected guest enters the scene, pausing the massacre at the 11th hour. Our useless heroine is completely running on fumes. Her brain is total mush. She's thrown in the towel, and she's just waiting for death to cancel her life subscription in this absolute nightmare. But a stubborn rookie refuses to back down an inch. He steps in front of her, taking the suicidal risk of going toe-to-toe with a monster absurdly more jacked than him to try and save the girl. Without giving the sucker time to process his audacity, the madman throws defense out the window and goes full aggro. He definitely didn't come here to play nice, diving straight in for the kill. Our hero is way too tactical to cut a monster any slack. He decides to bury his deadliest trump card deep into the enemy's gut to turn the tide. With an opening made, the rescue finally becomes a reality. The guy takes on the burden of dragging his partner out of the slaughterhouse, proving that saving the girl matters a lot more than flexing his combat skills. But the path ahead turns into a minefield. The brainless enemies swarm the hallway like cockroaches, crying over their earlier defeat and blocking their only way out. Unable to drop the dead weight, the guy has to make a split-second choice. His own chest becomes a makeshift bulletproof vest, activating suicide mode to tank the damage and keep the escape going. Brutal. The drama peaks mid-escape, with the crybaby girl begging him to end the sacrifice. But she gets a flat-out no to her face, because quitting isn't even in this stubborn madman's vocabulary, until his human body simply gives out and his feet slip. Damn gravity comes to collect its due, crushing the frantic momentum that was the only thing staving off a game over. To make the nightmare feel like a walk in the park, the evil boss lady shows her face again, blocking the way. She announces that playtime is over and she's the one calling the shots now. The hammer of judgment drops mercilessly on both of them. A nuclear steamrolling aimed at permanently deleting their accounts in one fell swoop, ending the debate over who would survive in this sewer. When the dust settles, the harsh reality is laid bare on the other side of the crater. The mercenary tore up his own life and turned into a human sieve just to make sure his partner didn't end up as dead meat. With both feet in the grave, the guy finally says, "Screw it." He drops the cold mercenary act and lays out the sappy affection he'd been hiding behind his daily snark, saying his bitter goodbye. Refusing to be just another dead NPC, he triggers the universe's cheat code. In a final effort, he offers her his own warm blood to drink, saving this useless girl once and for all. It's a bizarre emotional ultimatum. The guy demands the useless girl stop crying, swallow his sacrifice, and use his blood as the ultimate power to rip that freak to shreds. With his final scolding delivered, his battery runs out. The brutal damage tears right through his stubbornness, and the madman finally bites the dust, slumping lifelessly to the ground. Grief triggers a bizarre, irreversible mutation. The useless crybaby dies right there on the floor, consumed by an animalistic rage mode so psychotic it makes the entire server tremble in panic. The human flatlined, but the useless girl drinks his blood and silently accepts the contract because she's no quitter. From this second on, the mercy meter hits 0 for whoever turned this night into a total shit show. The pain of losing her crush completely fries the girl's mind. The useless sacrifice didn't bring peace. It just triggered an absolute mental breakdown. She crosses the line into a psychotic break that no shrink could ever reverse. Swallowing all that vital essence at once takes a massive toll. The toxic fury starts eating away at her body from the inside, causing a brutal overload. Whatever sanity filter she still pretended to have is completely wiped out. Meanwhile, the arrogant villain totally ignores the red flags. Her massive ego left her blind to the real danger in the room. Thinking she owns the game, she mocks the suffering and treats the threat like a pesky mosquito. The mental torture she inflicts tears through them without mercy. The physical world goes down the drain and turns into the psycho's private playground. It's an absurd nightmare where logic and gravity get a swift kick in the ass. This mental weight crushes any futile attempt at resistance. The hallucinogenic maze chews up the surviving mercenaries without leaving a single opening. The entire squad's sanity is simply shredded. But then the dumb villain makes a rookie mistake. By openly mocking the death of the guy who sacrificed himself for the girl, she paints a giant neon target on her own forehead. The idiot just summoned the devil's wrath. In that same instant, her untouchable facade crumbles like a house of cards. The illusion of control goes down the sewer when her mental voodoo hits a brick wall of pure, bottled-up hate. The deadly roulette just turned against the invader. The girl finally embraces the curse she was always squeamish about using. Her reluctance to accept her own dark side takes a bullet to the back of the head right here. The moral barrier holding her back has been smashed to pieces. Absorbing all that life, she hijacks the memories, the courage, and the swagger of the useless dead guy. His bloodlust and survival instincts now burn right in the pit of her stomach. The dark transformation reaches its peak. The spoiled crybaby act evaporates instantly without a trace. In place of that weakness, all that's left is a cold, calculating lethality that would make any psychopath jealous. That's exactly when the big boss realizes her colossal fuck-up. Panic hits hard when the sadomasochistic little theater she thought she was directing goes down the tubes at the speed of light. The new hunter's aggressive aura effortlessly crushes the rival's circus of illusions. It becomes crystal clear who the real monster coming to collect the dead is. All the villain's massive tactical advantage goes up in useless smoke. The enemy henchmen also catch the tragic irony of the situation. The assholes who swore they were the big bad wolves realize reality too late. When the shit hits the fan, they notice they've locked themselves inside the gorilla's cage. The blind vengeance starts so fast that the hit lands before a single neuron can process the pain. That absurd hidden strength becomes a one-way ticket to hell for the whole crew. There is no military tactic or armor that can stop the runaway freight train she has become. The massacre results in a laughably instant annihilation. The invaders are wiped from the server like trash, paying the hefty price for their boss's stupidity. Each popped meatbag on the ground paves the road straight to the villain. The message has been delivered. The real beatdown is about to begin. This wannabe villain's cockiness evaporates in an instant. Her illusion of control goes down the drain, and the idiot realizes the colossal screw-up she made by underestimating the Huntress. The reason for this terror is obvious. The Huntress tossed her humanity in the trash, unleashing an intimidating aura that would make anyone crap their pants. Any pathetic attempt at resistance turns into a ridiculous joke. The absurd power gap reduces the so-called military elite to mere punching bags. With the lackeys completely disposed of, the Huntress locks her eyes on the main course. Playtime is over. All that cheap sadism is repaid with absurd interest. The villain's resistance turns to dust, proving that invading the wrong mind was her final choice. The bloodbath ends, and reality finally hits the invading commander. The idiot realizes she poked the wrong bear and that her chance to run is already down the drain. The tables have turned. The arrogant bitch who loved playing sadistic shrink is reduced to a useless piece of meat, completely losing control of her own grim fate. The Huntress makes a drastic decision. Gulping down her defeated enemy's soul juice would be the perfect dessert, but she spits on it and completely rejects the trophy out of sheer disgust. With her brain frying, some truly bizarre shit happens in the invader's broken mind. An avalanche of foreign voices kicks down the door to her head in a violent mental home invasion. And reality hits like a truck. The virus invading this mushy brain is the exact same guy who died to trigger the vampire's turbo mode. The dead meat from the battle is now living rent-free in his killer's head. To make matters worse, an omnipresent snitch delivers a termination letter straight from enemy HR. In her dying breath, the washed-up commander hears that her failure has turned her into recyclable trash to her own allies. Now the Huntress is calling the shots. She takes full control of the situation, reducing the former master of torture to a helpless bug on its back, completely dominating dominated. And the worst part is, the Huntress completely embraces this maniacal revenge. All that hesitation bullshit is gone, making way for a sick smile as she turns the clown who wiped out her squad into dust. And then comes the final blow, a devastating attack, impossible to parry or dodge, dispatching the commander's package straight to the Department of Eternally Cancelled Souls. The beatdown is so absurd, it deletes any trace of this joke of a threat. Extermination delivered successfully, emptying the recycle bin with no backup option. The brawl ends in a bloodbath, and the Huntress fully embraces her new predatory skin. The absurd newly installed power perfectly suits the violent woman she decided to become today. Amidst this sea of rubble, the bros suck it up and accept their new reality. They survived, but the soft little girl is long gone, replaced by a raging hurricane molded by grief and pure hatred. The deadly game of hide-and-seek is over for good. Now the crazy bitch carries the final promise she made to her fallen hero, with the sole mission of grinding every last invader on the map into dust. And even though they're shitting themselves over the literal tank she's become, the extras all nod in agreement. They swallow their pride and accept that this lethal psychopath is the only leader they have left. Human limitations have been tossed in the trash. The mad woman uses her souped-up chassis to tear through the scenery at an insane speed that would give her former self a heart attack at the first corner. And the welcoming scenery is absolute filth. The imposing capital got utterly wrecked, reduced to an open-air landfill stuffed with corpses up by those asshole troops, floating untouchable way the hell up there. Hell's board of directors watches the little show of atrocities from the VIP seats. To this lunatic, torturing millions isn't a red flag on his resume, it's pure contemporary art. Turning the city into a meat grinder was always this asshole's one and only goal, and now he's licking his lips, getting off on this sick mental masturbation. It's obvious that playing real estate was never the goal for these losers. The official plan was to drag the whole world straight to hell, in a genuine gourmet suicide club dressed as the apocalypse. The grand finale of his ridiculous circus is just one step away from choking on a plot twist nobody asked for. The fight script violently flips on its head. A bizarre, off-the-radar squad crashes the party, flipping the dumbass villain's table and completely shattering the balance of power. For the poor bastards who haven't been turned into dog food yet, this invasion feels like a visit from angels. The tears and snot give way to a pathetic illusion that the VIP rescue chopper has finally touched down, but that heavenly fairy tale goes down the drain in a heartbeat. The supposed miracle is just a dumbass war tank from another crazy cult, shoving a fanatical crusade right down the throat of this open-air slaughterhouse. The religious steamroller crashes the party with shotguns in hand, not giving a single shit about diplomacy. The Pope's divine order is to surgically wipe out any weird trash that dares to step on their turf. The Inquisition's holy tractors hit the asphalt. The witch hunt is officially unleashed, and if any idiot gets caught in their crosshairs, whether it's some clueless civilian or a massive monster, there won't be a little prayer to save their skin. The Sacred Purge kicks off with zero mercy. These Inquisition lunatics couldn't care less about who's who, turning the remains of the capital into an absurdly loud and chaotic divine barbecue. Reality hits hard on the streets. The clergy's clique doesn't give a damn about hostages, deciding to fry not just the monsters, but every British citizen caught in the crossfire. High above, the leader of the Inquisition goes completely off the rails. He gets chills from the tragedy, treating the massacre as if the screams of others were the most beautiful music in the world. Far from the filth, the mastermind behind the Nazi invasion watches in fascination. The church's rampage has just become the heavy metal concert he always wanted to conduct, taking the war to an insane new level. Taking a beat down demands a sinister tactical shift on the battlefield. The creatures of the night have to reinvent their brawling on the fly so they don't get turned into paste under the pressure of the purification weapons. To strike back in kind, the enemy ship fires up its most broken toy, pushing the machine to its absolute limit. The invasion's craziest secret weapon is deployed to completely screw with the logic of the slaughter. But the Vatican reveals the true scale of this game as they pop up on screen. A massive fleet of synchronized sickos parades in full villain poses to wipe the city clean once and for all. A head-on collision is brutal and inevitable. The edgy little soldiers charge foaming at the mouth, punching death right in the face as they slam into the wall of religious fanatics. Drunk on the slaughter, the head of the Inquisition flushes the rulebook down the toilet for good. The goal now is to obliterate absolutely every obstacle in their path without a shred of pity. A blast of pure ruin cuts through the air, hitting the flying base dead center. The enemy command center takes the full brunt of the divine wrath. pushing the bunker's walls to their absolute limit. With the flaming ceiling caving in, the nerd squad finally accepts they're screwed. With no magic tricks left up their sleeves, they panic and cry out for rescue, knowing that staying put guarantees a nasty game over. Completely consumed by madness, the Nazi leader puts on the cape of Hell's maestro. Watching his own crew get turned into Swiss cheese while the building collapses creates the exact schizophrenic symphony he always dreamed of conducting. It's amidst the ashes that the psychopath reaches the climax of his delusion. Without sweating a single drop of fear for his own sinking troops, he admires the mutual destruction. For him, watching his empire go down the drain right alongside the enemy is the ultimate trophy, as long as they all fry in the same bucket. The chubby major admires his own colossal mess. For this moron, turning London into a giant barbecue isn't a tragedy, it's the pure climax of his pathetic existence. But the Vatican's arrogant illusion completely shatters on the streets. The Inquisitors' egos go down the drain when they realize they flew like blind ducks right into an invader's trap, and the sickest bombshell blows up right in Hellsing's face. The butler Walter, who always played the organization's untouchable shield, finally outs himself as the official lapdog of this genocide. He threw away his humanity and decades of loyalty. It all went to the trash over a fragile ego and a sick desire to play invincible again. While the betrayal runs wild, the fanaticism goes into insane mode. The Vatican troops say fuck it to the casualties and dive headfirst into a suicidal bloodlust. The slaughter turns into a damn factory conveyor belt. The whole city is transformed into a giant bloody slaughterhouse where civilian lives are worth less than trash. Integra watches the chaos burning London to a crisp, realizing the sheer scale of the freak show. The city turns to dust, while the holy troops that were supposed to save everyone act like the executioners of the party. Father Anderson, the Vatican's most lethal pit bull, hits the breaking point of his sanity. Seeing this out-of-control slaughterhouse crosses a moral line that his faith just can't gloss over. The ideological clash catches fire when Anderson spits on his superior's orders. He firmly refuses to be the complicit bitch to an arrogant man who wants to sit on the divine throne. But the corporate bootlicking speaks louder than ethics for the rest. With nowhere to run, the Vatican squad corners Integra, drooling to blow her brains out. A bizarre miracle sprouts from the dark. Hellsing's little puppy comes back completely vicious, grinding the executioners into an instant butchery just to save her boss's skin. She becomes the ultimate wall of flesh between Integra and the chaos. That insecure rookie said fuck it and turned into a bloodthirsty, ruthless juggernaut. The brutal toll is paid right there. She warns that this beautiful monstrous upgrade only happened because she had to suck the life and blood out of her own fallen partner. The veteran priest doesn't fall for that angel face. Anderson pierces right through her facade with his eyes, sniffing out that the girl is already bowing down to the full-blown demon she just hatched. Suddenly, the enemy's cockiness melts away beautifully. Their perfectly cute little siege plan smashes its face against a brick wall. The radios go dead and the first line of defense turns to dust. The leadership's brains simply fry with a colossal bug in their systems. It's physically impossible to process the insane juggernaut that breached their security like a phantom. The epic replay of a lethal past slices through all defenses. A colossal threat shoves its presence down their throats, asserting its absolute dominance. The Uber of Death finally shows what it came for. Stuffed with annihilation, the gigantic ship parks up, drooling to grind up whatever life is left in London. Up there, the devil can barely hide his terrifying hard-on. After rotting in the darkness for centuries, just the scent of the imminent massacre gets the beast completely high. From here on out, faction uniforms don't mean jack shit, Bible thumper, or Nazi to the owner of the playground. Anyone stepping foot in the city just became filet mignon. The three crazy bosses finally lock their obsessed stares. Years of beef clash right now, and this proud bunch would rather swallow glass than back down from the war. Allies and enemies shit bricks, feeling the board flip right then and there. The real game over has shown its face, and simply continuing to breathe just became an unattainable luxury. But to the nerd who designed the whole damn thing, this is a pure tactical orgasm. With the master of vampires on stage, the global sadistic clusterfuck finally reaches its max level. The time for playing voyeur is over. Our overpowered vampire decides the carnage has reached the perfect boiling point for him to crash this freak show. Hovering over the flames like a nightmare, he commands the scene. All of London is screwed, but to him, this ruined city is the perfect playground for a bloodbath. The utter chaos suddenly finds a singular target. Catholics and Nazis pause their own war, and in sheer terror, every gun barrel from both sides is aimed right at the vampire. This lunatic's corrupted black sludge begins to swallow the ground. It's such a bizarre and monstrous presence that it instantly shatters any remaining ounce of courage the soldiers had. But amidst all this panic, Father Anderson decides to go completely unhinged. He snaps out of the shock and charges forward, balancing the scales of fear with sheer stupidity and blind fury. However, before slicing up the priest, our sadistic hound puts his fangs away. The biggest freak on the battlefield bows down and begs like a puppy for his master's permission to act, and the boss answers without a drop of mercy. With absolute coldness, she signs the death warrant for every living soldier out there. Crusader or Nazi, everyone is dead meat. The hound accepts the order, drooling with a sadistic thrill. The final leash snaps for good, and the pure essence of the apocalypse breaks out of its cage to swallow the entire night whole. The shitstorm in London hits peak chaos. On one side, Millennium's Nazi cosplayers await the final showdown, a bunch of monsters created just to cause total annihilation in the city. On the other side, the Vatican marches in acting untouchable. These guys turn this crusade into an all-you-can-eat carnage buffet, swearing they're gonna wipe out their enemies using the lame excuse of divine justice. But Integra sees perfectly through the ridiculous arrogance of these two little groups. She's the only one there aware of the massive world of hurt she's about to unleash, knowing everyone's grave has already been dug. The metaphorical zipper is finally unzipped, and centuries of forced celibacy come crashing down. Taking off these limiters isn't just a minor buff, it's puking an entire legion of traumatizing freaks right into everyone's laps. The monster finally embraces his psycho side, dropping the good guy act. The macabre ritual brings out the original vampire in his filthiest and most untamable version. The bill for centuries of slaughter comes due all at once in the form of a bizarre sea flooding the streets. The madman literally throws up millions of souls he swallowed deep over the years, drowning everything. In a split second, everyone's shitting their pants in despair. The Vatican's holy arrogance and the Nazis' macho posturing turn into pure paralyzing sobbing the moment they realize they went from being hunters to being midnight snacks. The counterattack looks brutal, sure, but hurting a guy who already gave the middle finger to mortality is totally pointless. Destroying his flesh just hits the apocalypse mode button. The only hunter badass enough to face this head-on realizes just how huge of a shit sandwich he's dealing with. He loses the illusion of a fair 1v1, noticing that right now, the only thing ruling this whole mess is pure terror. While the enemies cry, Millennium's leadership has a completely psychopathic reaction. Seeing his own crew getting brutally ripped in half is a reason to party, proving the Major is beyond saving. The dead come back to collect rent without lube. No magic glitter barrier can withstand the vengeful pounding from this army of the beyond, swatting away any modern tech. The sheer absurdity of this freak show becomes clear when badass armies from the past march side by side in this dark soup. They walk without any of their former glory, reduced to obedient slaves serving vampire daddy. The little priest's fantasy of running the game evaporates, realizing the massive screw-up he walked into. Meanwhile, Integra holds it down like a boss, accepting bathing the city in blood as mere collateral damage. The spoiler hits Seras right in the face. The blonde is forced to face her own doom, finally understanding the raw, massive weight of the curse she swallowed and the abyss that revoked her human card forever. The weird paladin finally figures out the bat's immortality cheats. It's not a holy shield, it's just disgusting math. To kill him for good, you gotta slice through the millions of souls acting as his meat shield, one by one. The big vamp sheds his trench coat and puts on his most OP historical cosplay. The Master of War spawns right out of the darkness, ready to be the tour guide in the middle of this hellish buffet. Rome's leader's macho posturing melts into pathetic sobbing. The idiot realizes he poked the very historical psycho who painted Europe red, signing his crusade's death certificate. With their brains frying, the remaining noobs get a massive punch to the gut. The monster dons his classic name, rubbing it in their faces that they tried to take on the very root of the world's damnation. The boss's reactions say it all in this apocalyptic scenario. While Millennium's little Nazis get off on watching the world burn, that idiot Maxwell finally realizes the colossal screw-up he made. The Vatican's little holy crusade just slammed face first into the devil himself. Right in the middle of this collective meltdown, Alucard's consciousness awakens to his true form. That little leashed monster of Hellsing's is history. True terror finally shows its face. The original boss of Wallachia takes the reins now. He vomits back into the real world every miserable soul he's devoured over the centuries. It's an immortal VIP army, ready to swing their swords and march under Big Daddy's supreme command. The sheer bizarreness of the battle reaches a whole new level. Cavalry and dusty centuries-old tactics wipe the floor with modern troops, just like an adult beating up a kid. It's the past ruthlessly chewing up the present. The devastation spreads, and the very heart of London is swallowed by this bizarre darkness. The big vamp's territory expands absurdly. The whole city turns into an all-you-can-eat buffet of fresh blood. Simply brutal. And this is when the sheer scale of the mess becomes crystal clear to everyone. The factions that swore they were riding the apocalypse realize they're just pathetic extras. Everyone's genius little plan went down the drain. Now, this bloody playground is Alucard's exclusive and absolute property. The Vatican's holy crusade turns into an instant bloodbath. Praying doesn't do shit when literal death knocks on your door to collect rent. Fighting back is a complete joke against this massacre. These guys are already dead. Someone just forgot to notify their brains. Millennium Nazis and Vatican priests fall into the same pit of carnage. Gang rivalries don't matter anymore. Faced with this monstrous nightmare, any enemy force literally becomes premium fertilizer for the battlefield. Sensing the shit show, the top brass tries to escape by air. With their lackeys turning into ground meat down below, the cowards' only option is to grab a safe VIP seat in the sky. They actually still think they can dodge the absurd damage they've caused. But the premium terror package ruins their aerial getaway. Devoured souls rise from the ashes and intercept the attack. These bizarre figures prove they're the most overpowered meat grinders on the entire battlefield, ensuring no one walks away unpunished. With their failure out in the open, a massive reality check slaps the crappy priest who orchestrated this invasion right in the face. His untouchable big shot facade evaporates in an instant. All that's left on his face is the pathetic fear of a loser watching his own life fall apart. His prize for being an arrogant coward arrives via express delivery. His backup simply hits the eject button and tosses him aside. The commander is left in the rain, thrown out like trash right into the exact human slaughterhouse he went out of his way to organize. Down on the ground, the pissed-off stiffs rise from the carnage to collect their due. It's a grotesque mob of furious corpses surrounding the leader. They're bloodthirsty, eager to rip the head off the imbecile responsible for this mass slaughter. With nowhere to run, he goes all in and locks himself inside an armored hunk of metal. In his empty little head, this thick glass is an impenetrable magic shield. He actually thinks it's going to save his precious divine body from the bizarre savagery outside, but the stab in the back comes from within his own guard. The buffed soldier who was supposed to protect him smashes the glass and shatters his illusion of safety. He decides to put on the judge's robes and prove that the real toxic trash is this useless leadership. Stripped of its armor, the shipbox completely falls apart and becomes a dead-end trap. The flood of furious corpses finally finds a juicy breach to swarm in. Now there's plenty of room for them to chew the clown who played God of War alive. The toll for his massive vanity is paid up front and in blood. There is no action movie glamour or heroism in the little boss's downfall. The arrogant prick just becomes another pathetic meatbag being brutally torn to shreds in the dark. The hulking soldier watches closely, swallowing the karma of his rebellion. He took a scythe to the rotten root of his own faction. Now he carries the traumatic burden of having shipped his abusive boss straight into the jaws of hell. The final receipt for this war is nothing but crushed garbage and silence. The pyramid scheme they sold about curing the planet was a complete lie. It all ended in a ridiculous mass grave, shoving dirt down the throats of a worthless herd. The dust from the destroyed Vatican hasn't even settled, and a warrior is already marching toward the epicenter of this disaster. The air is heavy with the stench of a massacre, but he ignores it all and walks straight into the meat grinder. With a final sigh of pity, he closes the casket on that failed leadership. Even after the backstabbing, he sheds a genuine tear, bringing an end to a bullshit cycle that was completely doomed to fail from the start. The order for his allies is to tuck their tails between their legs and bail immediately. He screams for his crew to flee and protect the ruins of their home, while choosing a far more suicidal path for himself. And now reality finally sets in, shattering any fairy tales of a holy war. The millions of dead were nothing but a calculated sacrifice to summon a single, overpowered monster onto the battlefield. The polite suit and tie masquerade goes out the window. What rises from that pool of blood is the original King of Slaughter, the absolute embodiment of historical terror, showing his face completely unleashed and not giving a single shit about mercy. While the planet shits its pants in fear, the one holding the monster's leash just raises her glass. She welcomes the slaughter with the smirk of someone who just got their sharpest knife back. In the midst of that disgusting bloodbath, the master bloodsucker takes a moment to give a thumbs up of approval. It's proof that, even during the apocalypse, the toxic partnership with his little apprentice is still going strong. But playtime is over when his arch-enemy kicks the door down, blinded by fanaticism. Even staring down an invincible horde from hell, this sick bastard ignores death, focused entirely on the boss's head off. The brawl kicks off completely, and the vampire lord hits back like a freight train. It's a brutal, absurd collision between an ancient monster and the sheer stubbornness of a zealot who refuses to lose. Faced with such audacity, the aberration unleashes his most sadistic side. The monster salivates with excitement at seeing the only piece of human flesh capable of making him break a sweat in a fight. In the background of all this chaos, the damned architect licks his lips, reveling in every tragedy. To this bastard, everyone killing each other isn't bad luck. It's literally the sick climax of the dirty little plan he's been hatching for the last few decades. The vampire lord realizes his time to shine has come. The pointless slaughter of extras completely loses its appeal. Now his only priority is settling this centuries-old geezer brawl once and for all. The apprentice short-circuits trying to process the absurdity, while the allied queen realizes that interfering is a straight-up death wish. They get front-row seats to the absolute peak of a legendary beatdown. The crazy bastard charges in without a second thought and zero escape plan. He completely revokes his own human card in a suicidal rush against a level boss that clearly has an infinite health bar. But the lord doesn't even blink, eating the strike like it's absolutely nothing. The freak show has begun, proving this duel is going to be settled with straight-up rib-cracking punches. No cheap magic allowed. Blind rage vaporizes any urge the extremist has to lay down and cry. He starts hacking his own biology, turning into a runaway bulldozer fueled purely by the burning desire to cancel heretics. Noticing this unyielding bloodlust, the bloodsucker pulls the craziest stun of the day and drops his guard completely. He practically begs to take the finishing blow in a sadistic pop quiz to test the human's courage. The crazy gamble pays off and the priest invades the devil's VIP area. He ignores all the AoE damage, drooling exclusively over the chance to rip out the beast's core. The two brands of madness clash head-on in an insane brawl. The collision between the edgy Dark Eternity and God's fanbase creates a nuke-level explosion, sending any hope of sanity straight to the grave. The bloodsucker realizes that shit has completely hit the fan and brings out his legendary hand cannon. The weapon was custom-made to delete hackers who usually ignore the game over screen. The repo man of beatdowns doesn't forgive interest. The lunatic's body crumbles like a sandcastle on the spot, burying any hope of finishing the job in close quarters. But biology's bill finally comes due in a bizarre way. The parasitic holy vine replaces his severed arm with thorns, erasing the last barrier separating the religious man from a genuine B-movie monster. Wanting to troll nature's new little toy, the demon lord pukes up the zombie zoo he's been dining on for millennia. An absurd wall of extras sprouts from the ground to test if the divine update can handle the heat. The crazy bastard couldn't give less of a shit about the absurd amount of zombies on screen. He turns on the holy meat grinder and mows down that deranged mob like overgrown weeds in the backyard. Watching this, the sadist crushes his opponent's ego by dropping the spoiler of his own infinite health. It's a slap in the face to prove that a motivational speaker is utterly useless against a hacked god whose stamina bar never drains. Even so, the Lord gives a 5-star rating to the madman's unshakable stubbornness. There's some hardcore spiritual bromance and a borderline pornographic respect for the absurd sacrifice of throwing his own body into the fire without blinking. The philosophical anvil finally crushes the intern's destiny. She tosses her existential crisis down the drain and fully embraces the psychopathy, downloading her master's same sadistic mindset just to be able to tank the upcoming beatdowns of this freak show. The idiot responsible for all this chaos watches the apocalypse from the VIP seats. While the front line turns into mincemeat, the coward kicks back, watching the destruction like it's a Sunday matinee. The real reason for this slaughter finally becomes clear. The brilliant plan is the ultimate mass suicide, where enemies, civilians, and even his own goons are going to get roasted. Straight out of the meat grinder, the fanatic's toll has come due. Turning into a mutant saved his life, but the biological collateral damage turned his carcass into an absolute wreck. Surfing on his mountain of stiffs, the bespectacled vampire assesses his rival's damage. The Dracula tries to figure out if the badass he admired so much has just turned into recyclable trash, but the small talk dies right then and there. Pumped full of holy steroids and pure hatred in his heart, the lunatic ignores the vampire's babble and goes straight into maximum aggression mode. The big vampire reacts with pure, morbid arousal. Watching some moron kick the laws of physics straight to hell just to trade blows with him triggers the perfect mental orgasm. Along the way, the massive barrier of zombies turns into wet toilet paper in the priest's hands. This heretical display of power proves that filling the screen with useless extras won't stop a madman who's 100% focused. Without thinking twice, he unleashes all his destructive power. The crazy gamble is shoved deep into the bowels of the piled-up zombie horde. The impenetrable energy shield crumbles like a cookie, and the wall of extras simply turns to dust. The runway is finally 100% clear to reach the immortal lord. Even in the middle of all this mayhem, the big boss doesn't move a muscle to dodge. The bloodsucker maintains the arrogant pose of someone who was just counting down the seconds for the hand-to-hand combat to start. Spotting the wide-open blunder, the invader pushes all his chips in on an aggressive, suicidal dive. He's maniacally obsessed with the idea of piercing that damn lord's immortality from top to bottom. The cosmic blow literally tears through the map's textures. The colossal punch delivers an absurd climax, making it crystal clear that neither of these two idiots plans on taking a single cowardly step back. The message is obvious. Weaklings don't belong in this pit. This deathmatch is strictly between these two monsters, and tomorrow will depend entirely on which psychopath makes it out alive from this chaotic orgy of dust and fresh blood. The initial shock doesn't make anyone flinch. The dust settles, and these two idiots are left staring at each other like teenagers at a prom. It's clear the carnage will run wild until someone taps out and cries uncle. The fanatic doesn't miss a beat, turning into a veritable meat grinder. Using his divine mutation, he brushes off the danger and mixes everyone up, turning mangled bodies into bloody stepping stones to reach his goal. Watching this, the vampire's sickest desire goes through the roof. He's dying to get his ass kicked. He silently begs for this human to rip his heart out again, just to prove the mortal legend is still alive. But this all-out brawl comes with a heavy toll. The poor bastard's body starts giving out from the absurd stress of taking on a sea of monsters, and every inch he pushes forward drains a brutal chunk of his life. Who gives a damn about pain? What little sanity he had left is tossed in the trash, making way for an unstoppable fanatical frenzy. He simply recycles his frustration into a completely psychotic and violent rage. That's when an absolute juggernaut of death rises up. The battlefield turns into an entire military empire, focused solely on steamrolling, crushing, and permanently deleting this lunatic's existence off the server without a trace. To make matters worse, death itself puts on the guise of the vampire warlord and leads the charge. Carrying his historical baggage of massacres, he's here to rub the cocky bastard's face in the mud for the ultimate boss fight. The tide turns when the Vatican bootlickers realize their boss is in trouble. Driven by a blind loyalty that crushes all sanity, the zealots adopt a completely batshit 100% suicidal stance. The supreme bloodsucker rubs the ugly truth right in their faces. He warns them that dying out there doesn't score them a free pass to heaven. It just guarantees an unpaid internship as an eternal slave in the Dark Lord's army. But the threat falls completely flat, and the entire squad marches straight into the slaughterhouse. Knowing victory is a joke, their pathetic game plan is to become human speed bumps just to stall the enemy for a few seconds. This freakout exposes the sheer hypocrisy of the battlefield. Deep down, they're all cut from the same rotten cloth, making up bullshit excuses to feed the same sick fetish for tearing each other apart. Since retreating is now just an urban legend, the church resorts to a desperate explosive measure. They turn into suicide bombers, selling their souls in a mass detonation to blow holes through the bloodsuckers' lines and raise hell. Right in the middle of this shit show, the fanatic doesn't give a damn about his henchmen turning to ash. He piggybacks off the slaughter of his own soldiers, using this soup of corpses as a shortcut to get his hands on his ultimate target. Except the naive illusion that throwing the Vatican to the wolves would pay off gets crushed immediately. The head vampire steamrolls everyone's hopes, proving that tonight's bloody massacre is still just in the tutorial phase. The battlefield has turned into hell, but the suicide dive paid off and the priest survives. He pushes forward, driven by blind faith, ready to finish the carnage his troops started. Retreating is not an option. The vampire lord acknowledges the audacity of tearing through that nightmare and arriving in one piece at the main stage. He applauds his human rival's aggression. Finally, the stage is set for the lethal duel he had been anticipating, but the priest draws his trump card for the final strike. The church wouldn't send their greatest asset to the slaughterhouse without a failsafe. What he pulls from his sleeve is the Vatican's dirtiest and best-kept weapon. The vampire feels a chill down his spine and his bloodlust vanishes instantly. He realizes the brawl has turned into an otherworldly nightmare. The artifact's presence violently shatters the lines separating the divine from the demonic. The artifact reveals itself to be a classic instrument of torture. History's most famous symbol of pain has been recycled into a bizarre and immensely powerful weapon. It's a sacred hypocritical relic designed to wipe darkness off the map. The sight makes the Vampire King sick to his stomach. He loses it, begging his rival to stop this madness. Seeing his favorite enemy about to throw his sanity in the trash for divine power disgusts the monster. The immortal lays it out straight. Only a true human has the right to kill a monster. By using this divine power, the priest is taking the coward's way out. He would be committing the exact same act of cowardice the vampire did in the past to escape mortality. But the warrior's resolve is made of stone, and he ignores the enemy's philosophy. Laughing, he seals his fate and embraces his own death. Blinded by devotion, the fanatic is eager to erase his own life in exchange for becoming a divine storm. The threshold is crossed with a brutal strike. He plunges the artifact into his own body, flushing decades of humanity down the drain. Playtime is over. From here on out, it's a free fall with no breaks. The heretical miracle unfolds right in front of the vampire. The human soldier dies for good, giving birth to an indescribable divine abomination. The battlefield's last shred of humanity is wiped out in this absolute disaster. An uncomfortable silence swallows the battlefield. The great rival the Vampire King admired so much has thrown his humanity aside, using a heretical relic to spew a bizarre monstrosity into reality. Disappointment crushes the vampire's cold heart. Seeing his opponent throw his own mortality away for a cheap miracle is the worst betrayal imaginable. All mutual respect and admiration are gone. Determined to punish the priest, he strikes back, but reality hits him hard. The insane speed of this new creature reverses the massive power gap and simply crushes any chance of defense. In a frantic retaliation born of pure survival, a brutal counterattack turns the enemy's body into a bloody pulp. The physical destruction goes way beyond the limits of reason, proving that biology has become a mere joke. But the rules of life and death have been thrown out the window. The miracle latches onto the remains of that destroyed body, creating a practically immortal juggernaut of flesh, making any attempt to kill him seem entirely pointless. Blind fanaticism has finally consumed the old crusader. By accepting this complete corruption, he has transformed into the exact vile aberration he spent his entire miserable life hunting. The agents of Section 33 watch in shock. They realize their master's extreme faith has exacted an irreversible toll, and seeing him lose his moral compass in such a grotesque way hits them like a ton of bricks. The sacred power overflows, dripping with violence, infecting the ground and spitting on the laws of physics. This bizarre spiral turns the lunatic into the perfect weapon of mass destruction for one final bloodbath. Anderson's last ounce of human sanity simply evaporates from existence right about now. The holy little toy starts swallowing the guy from the inside out. He tosses his consciousness in the trash just to become an extension of this bizarre divine weapon. But Alucard would rather die than back down. If his opponent wants an absurd war, he decides to return the favor with pure savagery. The brawl turns into an absurd head-to-head clash. The Vampire King pulls out his most OP weapons to see if this little divine armor can really take a beating. The result of these two freaks clashing head-on completely breaks the map. The nasty impact creates a black hole that simply tears the whole stage in half. The beatdown is literally deleting useless armies from the face of the earth in a snap. The military Wi-Fi dies, leaving the top brass completely blind in the middle of the chaos. While the base freaks out, the supreme boss gives zero fucks about the urgency. In his sick little head, grinding up his own guys is the orgasmic peak of this little play. Instead of a tactical retreat, he locks in a mass suicide for the troops. The rule now is to kick any poor bastard's ass straight into the meat grinder. It's right around now that the moral squeamishness of a few bigwigs throws the rules in the trash. Refusing to toss their little soldiers into the blender turns into a crazy, rebellious strike against command. The punishment for this rebellion comes in hot via the little killer robot. The machine shuts the lights out on any dumbass who tries to fight the suicide order. The most bizarre part is that blowing up his suited buddy doesn't spark a single drop of guilt. The boss's only reaction is to kick that useless corpse around like it's just a torn cushion in the living room. With the opposition wiped out, the new management rolls out widespread panic. The tactic flushes the survival instinct down the toilet and forces the crew to march to their deaths under threats and pure savagery. And the little soldiers swallow the absolute madness dry. Their fear evaporates, turning into an insane hard-on to drag as many idiots as possible to hell in a suicidal blood orgy. The scumbag behind this freak show breathes in the chaos, loving every second of it. Everyone dying hand in hand was never a rookie mistake. The asshole finally sniffs absolute victory, getting the entire planet to cannibalize itself for free. He beats the whole game without ever leaving his chair, just eating popcorn and watching the massacre slice humanity into tiny pieces. Alucard doesn't think twice upon seeing the colossal screw-up the priest just made. He decides that the only acceptable solution is to beat the living hell out of him until there's nothing nothing left but dust. The goal is to wipe this fool off the face of the earth before the holy relic finishes its upgrade. The vampire lord goes all out, and the carnage reaches ridiculous proportions. He unloads a storm of lead in a blind desperation to delete the bastard from the server. It's pure brute force in an attempt to stop the overpowered metamorphosis. But the gunfire grinds to a halt, and the ensuing silence is deafening. Helena's nail didn't just pierce deep, it glitched the very reality of the place. The holy ooze mixes with the gothic grime, proving that the attack did absolutely nothing. When the dust finally settles, the harsh truth hits hard. The hot-headed human Alexander Anderson has permanently bit the dust. What spawned from this trash is an infinitely worse divine abomination. The new entity embraces its monstrous skin with a disturbing eagerness. Zero tears and zero guilt over the humanity left behind. He realizes he finally unlocked the OP cheats to settle the holy score by brute force. The reality check completely shatters the bloodsucker's swagger. For the first time in his long gothic life, he actually shits his pants. The hunter swallows hard upon realizing that the ridiculous scales of aggression have flipped, putting his own ass on the chopping block. The counterattack hits hard, and the Holy Stomp shatters the infinite HP hack the Lord flaunted. This bizarre bulldozer of aggression doesn't just hurt the vampire's whining flesh, it ruthlessly deletes the millions of familiar spirits and souls Alucard has devoured over the ages, causing a massive wipeout in his army. The endless pool of zombie cannon fodder that protected him goes straight down the drain. The big bat's humiliating fall exposes his ridiculous facade, shattering into 1,000 pieces under the holy beatdown. Without his extra lives, the King of the Night takes a massive nerf, left naked and vulnerable out in the cold of his own bad luck. Without his shield of millions of souls, Alucard feels the crushing weight of vulnerability for the first time in centuries. Completely disoriented and with his mind reeling, the vampire tries to focus to figure out what is happening around him. But Seras decides to put her own body on the line. Without a second thought, she throws herself onto the front lines to block the blessed weapon before it pierces her master. The girl becomes an unlikely human shield, entirely risking her very existence. The hulking priest's overwhelming strength, however, is crushing and begins to tear through the vampire's defenses. The merciless attack pushes forward, threatening to swallow the poor girl in the same divine condemnation. Extreme physical agony simply consumes her. It is in this critical moment that the master comes to his senses. With his absurd arrogance completely intact, Alucard tells his soldier to relax and step back. He is more than ready to take the reins of this mess and dominate the situation once again. No more meat shields. Alucard steps up and faces the holy threat entirely alone. Now, stripped of his defenses and without a single soul in his pocket, he welcomes the deadly one-on-one against his ultimate nemesis with open arms. The thought of having his immortal existence deleted by a true human absolutely thrills the Vampire King. Surrendering his life to an intense guy like the priest would be the epic finale he has dreamed of through centuries of pure boredom. But the bitter reality hits him like a freight train, and all that admiration turns to dust. Alucard realizes that Anderson threw his humanity in the trash to become a divine monster in a pathetic mistake. Because of this idiotic idea, he completely lost the right to be the vampire's official executioner. Goodbye, useless hesitation. The Vampire King simply ignores any barriers, charges with brutal fury, and drives a definitive blow deep into his enemy's abdomen. The game ends right there, erasing any chance of the priest seeing tomorrow. All of the Catholic lunatic's power turns to dust in the blink of an eye. The glowing weapons that represented the church's hatred shatter and can no longer cut even paper. It is the pathetic fall of a warrior who bet his soul on a miracle and lost horribly. Dying to a hypocrite who turned into the exact same bizarre freak he swore to hunt would be an unforgivable insult. Only a true human has the cosmic permission to erase a monster of the darkness. Any other ending is a joke that Alucard's massive ego would never swallow. The harsh reality check of defeat extracts a heavy toll in the end. Anderson's true agony is realizing that his massive sacrifice was for absolutely nothing. The dirty plan went south, and death mercilessly swallows the most overpowered hunter the Vatican has ever seen. The dust finally settles and a funeral vibe hangs heavy in the air. Our OP vampire doesn't even crack a smile at his apparent victory. He merely observes the bleak aftermath, taking in the heavy weight of a rivalry that just hit its absolute breaking point. The trenchcoat Dracula himself lays bare the pathetic reality of wannabe immortals. He parades through battle battles wiping the floor with everyone. Not because he's the king of the hill, but because he's a bottomless pit of existential dread. Deep down, he's just a desperate creature searching for his own grave rather than a true Dark Lord. But suddenly, a final enemy charge hits with everything it's got. Without his army of souls acting as a meat shield, the impact of the blow actually does some real damage to the bloodsucker. The absolute monster recoils, feeling the heavy toll of being completely vulnerable to danger for the first time in centuries. Enough messing around, it's time to put an end to this twisted fanfic once and for all. The vampire fights back with pure brutality, ripping out and crushing the very core powering his rival. The source of that bootleg miracle is severed at the root, guaranteeing a permanent game over. And with his rival defeated, reality hits hard and there is no victory lap. Looking at the massive screw-up that ruined the priest, the vampire doesn't see an enemy, but rather a cursed mirror. Realizing that both of them committed the exact same idiocy completely breaks his non-existent heart. As his HP finally hits 0, the fallen paladin doesn't bawl his eyes out in the face of death. If anything, he thinks the joke is absolutely hilarious. Watching the big bad Lord of Darkness melting into tears like a needy, overgrown baby right in front of him is something that completely shatters any badass image. With his dying breath, the priest absolutely roasts the vampire with the harsh truth. He spits right in his face that the big bad boogeyman is just a weak kid who couldn't handle mortal life, putting on a monster cosplay just to run away from the pain. He checks out of this world laughing, leaving his eternal rival cursed to choke on his own cowardice forever. The sun finally rears its head over this dumpster fire of a city. The carnage is over, but the daylight only serves to rub everyone's noses in the colossal devastation left behind by this pointless war. The weight of this bitter victory drops like an anvil on Integra and Seras. The VIP ticket to survival cost them watching a veteran throw his own soul in the trash. The Vampire King delivers the ultimate psychological beatdown to his defeated rival. He rubs it in the idiot's face that sacrificing his humanity didn't make him stronger. It just stripped away his right to weep over his own failure. Alucard spits out the golden rule of his dark, miserable existence. Becoming a full-blown monster means ripping away all joyful emotions and draining your own soul dry until there's absolutely nothing left inside. With his brain blue screening, the defeated clown escapes into the past. He locks himself away, hallucinating the only home he ever had. The exact same orphanage that his hunger for power kindly blew to pieces. With a depressing little prayer, the Pope's seal is revoked for good, and the Vatican's greatest killer officially bites the dust. The eternal dirt nap finally begins for this broken warrior, and by some rare miracle, Alucard actually pays his respects. It's a glitch in the Matrix seeing the big bad monster admit that his dead rival had balls and almost managed to tear down his bloody empire. But crying isn't on the schedule. The graveyard piece is butchered by a new asshole who turns the air toxic in 2 seconds flat, reopening the box office for the freak show. Without even time to blink, the fucking scenery is sliced in half. This sick stunt makes it painfully clear that this new mini-boss's broken abilities just shattered the power scale. When the smoke clears, this demon's face is finally leaked. The terrorist's identity is the most sickening plot twist for those who thought they couldn't be humiliated any further. And in that exact microsecond, the bloodsucker gets completely blindsided. His mocking tough guy persona evaporates on the spot, swallowed by panic and the humiliation of being played for a fool by someone from his own house. The spoiler melts Hellsing's brains live. Seeing the pillar of the organization pulling a knife on his own bosses freezes everyone, turning the heroes into statues of pure shock. His killing style exposes the dirty betrayal right away. The company's most loyal lapdog is now spinning a bizarre web just to slice up the masters who fed him. The receipt for his betrayal is slammed on the table. To try and play superior to Alucard, this jackass threw decades of honor into the fire and turned into the exact freak the good guys killed every day. What chills the spine is the traitor's disgusting poker face. Not giving a single flying fuck about the sea of blood, he just revels in the thrill of his hacked new youth with the pure arrogance of an untouchable. The contract is terminated with a sick, sadistic mockery spat right in his boss's face. His good guy pass is revoked, and the ex-lapdog has just activated ultimate slaughter mode against his own home.